ruthless，整天都 reckless，所有人 good try， 只扛最多人的 rich， realist attention fancy， I give him a frisk， swear I lie no deeper we do it got more than that square， I'm a stroke of the bank， give me how much money I give her my thanks， we call it back permissions but I'm not get whack， trying to take my money but I can't I like that whack。
You lick the thing that you're fooling everybody.
You get back in the closet. Go fuck yourself.
How much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
They're evil. They are actively doing evil. So treat them like the evil that they are.
The right to exist argument has been used now to the point where what it's going to mean is that the Israel you're talking about will include the annexed and illegally occupied West Bank. It's very interesting. The Israeli government has never said where it thinks the rule of Israel really ought to be and what it would settle for. And it would be immense help if it tells us where it thinks Israel's boundary should be. Every other country does do that.
It's time to stop pretending otherwise. It's time to be ruthless and time to afford them the same amount of grace that they give to their Palestinian victims, because they are only going to get more and more ruthless with their victims if you don't.
Yo, mic check 1 2. We're back. And I wanted to show you this real quick. This is how we'll start off the show. USA Canada, 3 fights in 9 seconds after US anthem booed. Well, this was 6 months ago. This could have been any amount of time. This could have been any time. It could have been yesterday. It could have been a year ago.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet
Nations face-off matchup is underway, and the gloves are off. Matthew Tkachuk and Brandon Hagel. Hagel from Tampa Bay, Tkachuk from Florida. Did not see this coming. Skated away as he got back up, imploring the crowd to get even more vocally involved if that's possible. And this start, if you can call it that, had we even started, reminiscent of the old days. Little chat at the start. Hagel and Matthew Tkachuk drop right off the hop. And I'm telling you, Sean, I'm standing down here, and I think there's zero chance that we see the puck hit the ice for more than 1 second before we're going to see both Tkachuk brothers sitting in the same penalty box. Well, Brady's out there, and Sam Bennett, who's been thrust out of their lineup tonight, he did not play against Sweden, is taking the face-off. He's clearly in there to help match the United States physicality. Brings a lot of grit, a lot of sandpaper. This was set. And here they come, Ray, you're right. Right before the first Tkachuk fight, this was set up. Here you go. Bennett in the lineup for the first time. Brady gets the better of this one. Sam Bennett, 8 years a teammate of Matthew Tkachuk in both Calgary and the last 3 in Florida, fighting Matthew's brother Brady. When the first face-off was about to hit the ice, Brady Tkachuk yelled across to Bennett, and he said, "Hey, Benny, after this, we're going." And so the change was made. Bennett jumped on the ice, and 3 seconds, 2 fights, and we thought it would be a wild night here in Montreal. We're off to this start. Well, Matthew Tkachuk was asked after the game against Finland about the booing of the U.S. anthem. He said, "I don't like it." Team USA said they use it as a motivator. Coaches and players on both sides said they hoped it wouldn't happen tonight. It did. It's helped set the tone. Charlie McAvoy put one on. You use getting your ass kicked as a motivator? Is that so? What a cope. Was them booing you? Was the crowd booing you so intensely during your national anthem? Are you turning that into positive energies somehow? I'd really like to know how you do that. Now we're 9 seconds in. We had a fight 2 seconds in, another one 1 second later. Now in the center of the action, it's Colton Parayko and JT Miller. Parayko's got a big size advantage. Miller's a tough dude, and this is like 1996 when this building opened up with the World Cup. That was the last time. This is like 30 years ago. The United States won the major best-on-best international competition, 1996 here. And Ray, we talked to Keith Tkachuk the other night, Brady and Matthew's dad, and he described what a physical battle that was throughout the 3-game series against Canada. And he was right at the center of it. He was, and his boys are tonight. Miller had his gloves off. He was looking for Parayko as the puck was covered by Binnington. Eventually we'll get some hockey. Eventually we'll get some hockey. This is where the phrase "the gloves are off" comes from. It has to be. Here is 3 tilts in 9 seconds. We'll start off with
headlines and then go into more specific stories. Democracy Now's whole broadcast is right here. You want a 2x it? Let's see if we can 2x it.
Is Democracy Now! London plastic surgeon's life-saving Gaza mission? In the middle of the night, in a sweltering theater lit by flickering bulbs and powered by a generator running on its last drops of fuel, Dr. Victoria Rose bent over a young boy whose body had been torn apart by shrapnel. She had only minutes to act before infection or shock claimed him. With hands trained at St. Thomas's Hospital in London, but now moving inside Gaza's crumbling Nasser Hospital, she sutured tissue and grafted skin, saving not only his life, but his future ability to move, to grow, perhaps even to dream again. I just want a ceasefire so that we can catch up, Rose whispered into her video diary that night. The camera caught the fatigue under her eyes, the blood staining her scrubs, and the unrelenting noise of the wounded being carried in. Rose, a consultant plastic surgeon from London, is not a political figure. She is not a diplomat or a general. Yet her presence in Gaza, her decision to take unpaid leave, to risk her safety, to work under bombardment, tells a story larger than herself. It is a story of what war does to civilians, what survival demands of doctors, and how the world's most advanced nations watch as one of the globe's most vulnerable populations starves, bleeds, and breaks. The mission, Rose volunteers with Ideals International Disaster and Emergency Aid with Long-Term Support, a charity that has been sending medical teams to Gaza since 2009. She has made 3 missions since war broke out in October 2023, each time confronting conditions worse than before. Her first trip, in March 2024, shocked her with the sight of European Gaza hospital transformed into a refugee camp. Gardens once green with citrus and flowers had become seas of tarpaulin. Families constructed makeshift walls of carpet and cloth in hospital corridors, entire households squeezed onto mattresses. The hospital had ceased to be just a place of healing. It was a place of shelter, survival, and despair. By August 2024, she returned to find devastation on a new scale. Driving into Gaza, she felt as though she was crossing a moonscape. No standing structures, no visible life for the first 15 minutes. Every road was lined with rubble, every home gutted. The silence was not peaceful. It was the silence of erasure. In May 2025, she entered Nasser Hospital. The conditions had deteriorated further still. The gardens were gone. The hospital itself had already been attacked multiple times. Airstrikes rumbled in the distance. The patients flooding in bore new kinds of wounds, no longer just burns and shrapnel, but waves of gunshot injuries as Israeli forces intensified their operations in southern Gaza. Her team took over the ground floor theaters. For 28 days, they worked almost without pause, fueled by energy bars and packets of dried food brought from London. Air conditioning was rationed to preserve fuel. Sweat pooled under surgical masks. Instruments had to be sterilized with limited electricity. Yet they operated hour after hour, graft after graft, skin by skin. Casualties without end. The mass casualties just didn't stop, Rose told the BBC. It was really shocking. At first, she and her colleagues repaired blast wounds, severe burns, shredded limbs, mangled faces. Then, increasingly, they treated gunshot victims. By the end of her stay, almost every case was a bullet wound. Children, teenagers, men and women with holes where bones should have been. The precision of the injury suggested something chilling, systematic targeting. Between surgeries, Rose began noticing patterns beyond the trauma ward. Malnutrition stalked every patient. Starvation was visible in their sunken faces, their thinning hair, the infections that would not heal because their bodies had no reserves left. She described appalling levels of hunger, and then came a new threat, disease. With sanitation systems collapsed, with water scarce, with waste piling in streets and camps, Gaza became a breeding ground. Rose reported outbreaks of illness, including a disturbing rise in flaccid paralysis, a rare immune condition that attacks nerves, leading to paralysis and death. Normally, Gaza would see 2 or 3 cases per year. In 1 month alone, there were 37 children under the age of 15. This is not just war trauma, Rose explained. It is public health collapse. It is famine and infection and fear all rolled together. Hospitals under fire. Rose's workplace, Nasser Hospital, has itself been struck. Israel insists Hamas uses hospitals as shields. Accusations Hamas denies. But whatever the military rationale, the result is the same. Patients are killed on stretchers. Doctors flee. Operating rooms, ambulances become targets. For Rose, each strike was not only a security threat, but a moral wound. Hospitals are meant to be sanctuaries under international law, places shielded even in war. Their violation leaves civilians nowhere to turn. At Nasser, Rose and her team worked through nights punctuated by the thud of shells. Patients shivered in wards lit only by mobile phones. Children screamed in corridors already overcrowded with families seeking refuge. Fuel ran low, forcing agonizing decisions. Power for incubators or for surgical lights, oxygen machines or sterilization units. The unbearable choice of doctors. In London, Rose is trained to treat 1 patient at a time with full resources. In Gaza, she had to decide who might live and who might die with a few quick judgments. I don't have time to think about the suffering I see, she admitted. I just try to get as much done as possible in the very short time I have so we can make a difference. Each day, she carried that weight. The boy with burns so severe she knew he would not survive. The teenager with a bullet wound to the spine who might never walk again. The mother begging her to treat a malnourished baby while 20 other patients screamed for attention. She shut out the cries, focused on her scalpel, and prayed that what she did would last when she flew home. The cost of caring, Rose has now made 3 trips, each one more dangerous. Her family begs her not to go again. They have endured nights without word, fearing she might be caught in a strike. They have watched her return gaunt and haunted, struggling to sleep after weeks of operating in chaos. Ideals, her charity, continues to send teams monthly, but access is increasingly restricted. Permits are denied, borders are sealed. Rose herself doubts she will be allowed back. I would love to go back, but I am fairly confident my application is going to be denied, she said. At home, she avoids the news. Watching images of Gaza from her living room feels unbearable when she has touched those wounds, seen those children, held those mothers' hands. Instead, she throws herself into fundraising, determined to keep other teams flowing, even if she cannot return. The larger picture. Rose's testimony is not only a personal diary, but a witness account. It documents a war where civilians are primary casualties, where hunger becomes a weapon, where disease stalks displaced populations, where hospitals are bombed, and where international law is shredded. Israel argues its operations target Hamas, that civilian harm is collateral. But the statistics, tens of thousands dead, most of them women and children, suggest civilians are not collateral but central. Gaza is becoming unlivable. Rose's descriptions of moonscapes, refugee corridors, and paralysis outbreaks read less like medical notes than like a chronicle of societal collapse. The The irony is sharp. A British plastic surgeon, trained in a country with one of the world's most advanced health systems, now spends her holidays patching up bodies in a place where even gauze is scarce. Her skills are vital, but her presence is also an indictment. Gaza's health system is so decimated that only foreign volunteers can plug the holes. A cry for humanity. In her diary, Rose spoke the sentence that lingers. I just want a ceasefire so that we can catch up, not so that we can win.
I think this is a pre-recorded broadcast for Labor Day.
Not so that we can rebuild, just catch up. In Gaza, the pace of killing has outstripped the capacity of even the most dedicated doctors to respond. The request is not political. It is human. It is a plea for time. Time to stitch wounds, time to prevent infections, time to save children before they starve. Conclusion. Who listens? Rose will return to London to clean wards and stock shelves, but her testimony remains. Each operation she performed is a life that carries her story. Each scar she stitched is a record of war crimes and resilience. As policymakers debate ceasefires, as politicians trade accusations, as the world scrolls past headlines, the voice of one surgeon cuts through, exhausted, haunted.
Israel assassinates Yemen's prime minister and other government ministers.
Compromises. They had settled for a partial withdrawal. There were a number of things that Hamas was willing to accept just to stop the war and get the starvation campaign, stop the starvation campaign. And of course, Israel rejected it and is now using their armored vehicles to blow up buildings in the biggest way possible in Gaza City. So Hamas on August 27th, they said, we were talking about the American real estate agent, Zionist Witkoff, who said, Witkoff's statements have become merely an echo of the voice of Netanyahu and his government of war criminals, blindly repeating the Israeli occupation's narrative, far from the facts known to mediators and the international community. And that's what they do now. They just lie. And this whole framework of diplomacy that they're trying to work in, that the rest of humanity tries to work in, is just unworkable because they don't feel, the Israelis, the Americans don't feel any obligation to follow through on what they promised. They don't feel any obligation to tell the truth to mediators, to the public, to each other, to much less to the people they're negotiating with. The Palestinian Authority was supposed to go to the United Nations meeting, and the Americans denied them visas. They said they can't give them visas under these various support Israel laws that they have on the books. So the Palestinian Authority, which is the greatest collaborator of Israel, that is currently torturing Palestinian prisoners on behalf of the Israelis in the West Bank, is not allowed to go to the United Nations because the Israelis are formalizing the idea that Netanyahu has stated that the other Israeli creatures, I don't know what to call them, ministers, Smotrich or Ben Gvir, whatever they are, those guys are all saying there will never be a Palestinian state. And when they say there will never be a Palestinian state, the Palestinian Authority's leaders reply by saying our cooperation with Israel is sacred. So there's an asymmetry here that is utterly beyond any ability to comprehend it, but nonetheless, that's what's going on. The Americans are not letting the Palestinian Authority, their own installed collaborators, they're not allowing them to come to America to sit at the UN. And the idea that the Americans, you have to go to America to go to the United Nations, it's absurd. And there were times, I believe, when the United Nations meeting was moved to Geneva because the Americans would not allow people to go. And that's not happening here. The UN is just meekly allowing it because that's what the UN does. They meekly allow whatever the genocidal real authorities, which are genocidal, want. And the Security Council, the final nail in the coffin of the Security Council was at least a year ago when they passed a binding resolution. The Americans didn't veto it, calling for a ceasefire on Gaza with Israel's war on Gaza, and the Americans didn't veto it, and then Israel ignored it, and the Americans said, "Oh, it wasn't, but we didn't really view it as binding." Security Council resolutions are binding; they've been binding in the past, and now they're not. And not only are they not, they're simply not. They're nothing. Security Council is nothing now. The Security Council might as well be like one of those letters that you get your friends together and sign, like a petition or something. They just petition. They're petitioning basically Israel. There was a joint statement. All 15 members of the UN Security Council, except the US, issued a joint statement, included the following points. The joint statement goes like this: "We express our deep concern about the presence of famine in Gaza Governorate. We call on Israel to immediately reverse its decision to expand its operation in Gaza. Famine in Gaza must be stopped immediately, and international law respected." Passive voice. Who is to stop the famine? Who is to respect the law? The use of starvation as a weapon of war is prohibited under international law. Who's using starvation as a weapon? Approximately 41,000 children are at risk of death due to malnutrition in Gaza. Actually, I don't know where they got that number. All the children are at risk of death due to malnutrition. We call for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. We call the Security Council of the United Nations calls for a ceasefire. They called for one. We call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages held by Hamas. Disgusting. It's a disgusting line. It's a stupid, disgusting, partisan line, that last one. But it exposes that the Security Council is over. And this is a message that I've been trying to write about. I'm finalizing a Substack about this right now, and I've been writing about it for a while now. I wrote about it at the end of last year, a piece called "The Illusions of 2024." And I really think that it's time to learn and adapt to the world as it is, instead of maintaining these illusions and these idealisms about this liberal order of international law and humanitarianism and diplomacy and freedom of press, freedom of speech, negotiated solutions, nonviolence. They have declared as loudly and brutally as possible, as it's possible to declare, that that is not how they are running the world anymore. And this statement from the Security Council, a body that used to create binding resolutions, a body that in the 1967 and 1973 war, the Israelis saw what they were doing as a race against time until the Security Council would make a binding resolution. Even the Lebanon War of 06, even those wars up until the 2000s, into the 2000s, the Israelis always thought, we have only so much time to commit these massacres until the United Nations passes the Security Council. The Americans can't hold it off. The Security Council will pass a resolution, and then we will have to stop. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that world anymore? I don't even know what that world. I can't remember that world. It's been 2 years. I can't remember that world. The idea that the Security Council could pass a resolution that would stop Israel, it's ridiculous now. It's laughable. We used to live in that world. That's how the world used to be. And now the Israelis they just laugh. They just laugh it off. I don't even know that they read this. They don't even have to read this. Why should they read this? Maybe they'll read it and say, oh, the UN is anti-Semitic, more proof they're anti-Semitic, and that's it. So that's the no end in sight report for tonight. Let's go to the fronts. Yemen, you guys know that the Israelis killed the prime minister of Yemen. They killed a whole bunch of ministers in Yemen. There was a meeting, a government meeting of ministers. Government ministers get together, they have meetings. The Israelis bombed it, killed the prime minister of another country. And there's absolutely nothing except maybe like a good job from other Western countries. And that's what I mean. So the resistance is, it's not just the resistance, the rest of the world, let's say, is trying to figure out how to get back a world of international law. They have a group committed to the UN Charter. It's over. I really think it's over. That era is over. This is an era of violence. This is an era of impunity and violence and murder. And the sooner people around the world understand the new parameters, the better. The sooner people can start to change it. They just killed the prime minister. The Yemenis have said they're going to continue to support Gaza, even if the sky falls. So the killing of the prime minister of Yemen is not the sky falling. It's a sacrifice. It's a loss. It's a devastating blow, but it's not going to change their position. The president, not the prime minister, the president, Al-Mashat, he's made some great speeches in the past. On August 30th, yesterday, he made a speech where he said, as we console ourselves, we live the tragedy of our brothers in Gaza, and we remember the injustice done to those children who were slaughtered without sin and annihilated without right. We feel the affliction of our sisters, the women of Gaza, who have become widows, bereaved mothers, prisoners, wounded, or slaughtered on the list of the dead. Our great martyrs shouldered their responsibility with full merit in the most difficult stage of Yemen's history. They pledged to God and their people and their nation to support their brothers in Gaza and Palestine, no matter the challenges and no matter the sacrifices. They have fulfilled their covenants and sealed them with their blood, crowning their journey and their struggle with the best conclusion, which is martyrdom for the sake of Allah the Almighty, in the most honorable of causes and against the staunchest of God's enemies, the criminal Zionists. That is the clear victory. To our people, and so now there's a message to individual messages one at a time. So to our people in Gaza, our position is the position, and it will remain so until the aggression is stopped and the siege is lifted from you, no matter the scale of the challenge. To the Zionists, I say, our revenge does not sleep and dark days await you for what the hands of your filthy, treacherous government have wrought. We call on all citizens around the world to refrain from any dealings with any assets belonging to the Zionist entity. The opportunity is still available for the settlers of the two sectors to return to their countries. To all companies present in the occupying entity, my last piece of advice to them is to leave before it's too late, for when pure sacred Yemeni blood is shed, it topples the thrones of empires that ruled the world or most of it. So what of a humiliating, despicable, and transient entity. The blood of these national symbols in our great and glorified government is sufficient for that. We will continue and we will meet challenge with challenge, and you will not taste security after today. For Allah is with us and victory is our ally no matter how long it takes. The price of freedom is blood, and we are the people of sacrifice, steadfastness, and defiance. So a really strong message, a real message that's, I think, worthy of the mourning that they're doing. Another spokesman who's fantastic is Al-Bukhaiti.
It's a very hardcore statement. What do you say? The price of liberty is paid in blood? It's... there's that kind of imagery in American politics as well, Freedom isn't free. No, it's a hefty fucking fee.
He's basically summarized that this is a red line crossed, and it puts the conflict between Israel and Yemen in a new phase. I mean, of course, escalation it's a one-way trip on escalation. On August 21st, there were 3 speeches since I talked to you guys last. August 21st, August 28th, and August 31st, 3 speeches by Sayyid Badruddin Abdul Malik al-Houthi, the spiritual leader of Ansarullah. So on August 21st, he did the thing that he often does, which is kind of berating the Arab Zionist regimes, the Arabs that are supporting, the Arab countries that are supporting Israel. So the Saudi ship that the Italian dock workers refused to allow to, I don't know, ship or leave, or, I mean, they did some action. The Italian dock workers did some action against a Saudi ship. Al-Houthi asked, why is there a Saudi ship carrying weapons to Israel? Al-Houthi mentioned the Egyptian gas deal with Israel. He mentioned the Greater Israel Project, the agenda that Israel has for the destruction of Al-Aqsa, which is advancing. On August 28th, the day that Israel killed the prime minister of Yemen, Al-Houthi made a speech too, and he said, what the Israeli enemy is doing is an anomaly even to what human nature dictates in terms of human feelings and a complete human and moral bankruptcy. The paper currency of the Israeli enemy that was printed 45 years ago bears a map that includes all of Palestine, all of Jordan, all of Lebanon, 2/3 of Syria, and a large area of Egypt from east of Egypt to the Nile, as well as western Iraq and the north of the Arabian Peninsula to Medina. So this is Greater Israel. That is the plan. And Al-Houthi is trying to warn these countries that they're helping Israel, even as Israel plans ultimately to dismantle their entire countries, but absorb them into Greater Israel. Al-Houthi made a third speech after the assassination of the prime minister and other leaders on basically today, August 31st, earlier today. He said, the Israeli enemy targeted a workshop of the Government of Change and Construction last Thursday, leading to the martyrdom of a group of ministers and government staff. He cited al-Mashat's speech, the brother president's address, sufficiently expressed the official and popular stance. Our word is to honor the sanctity and station of the martyrs and reaffirm the stance. So he said, the enemy's is a criminal foe unbound by rules, covenants, or considerations. Sacrifice is inherent to a just cause. It will not lead to retreat or weakness, but greater steadfastness, resolve, certainty, endurance, and cohesion. From day one, we conditioned ourselves for sacrifice. And then he said, the Zionist plan is the enslavement and violation of this ummah grounded in beliefs and curricula upon which positions and policies are built. The Jewish Zionist entity was built to implement domination and enslavement. And I think this is just really important for people to understand. This is the clearest understanding of what Israel is about, is stated by Al-Houthi here. He said, our people refuse to be onlookers while the Jewish Zionist enemies defile the courtyards of Al-Aqsa, violate its sanctity, seek to occupy and demolish it. Operationally, we confront the enemy, target it, inflict losses, and carry out continuous operations. So he says, the security battle accompanies the military battle. We've fortified the home front and achieved important successes against infiltration. God willing, further successes will foil what the Israeli enemy seeks to perpetrate against our institutions and society. So they are working on security. They're aware of the Israelis. The Israelis are not going to stop trying to assassinate people and bombing the civilian targets and trying to genocide them, like the Saudis genocided Yemen, like the Israelis are genociding the Palestinians now. So it's really important, I think, that Al-Houthi is trying to analyze what Israel is about, what the agenda is for the region, which is Greater Israel, which is the absorption of Lebanon, Syria, much of the Arabian Peninsula, Iraq, Egypt, much of Egypt, parts of Turkey, all are to be absorbed into Greater Israel. That's the plan. And of course, the genocide in Gaza, the bombing of Syria, the bombing of Lebanon, the creeping occupation of Lebanon, these are all parts of that Greater Israel project. So Syria, since we mentioned it, is getting bombed by Israel and also having meetings with Israel. It is a very humiliating spectacle. And because we're talking about Syria, we should also talk about Turkey. Turkey, I have a little anecdote. I used to follow the war in Afghanistan when the Americans, Canadians, Brits were occupying Afghanistan between 2001 and 2021. And if you followed that in the Canadian press, there was a funny thing because the Canadian press were based in Kandahar. They had a base, Tim Hortons, and all the comforts of Canadian life. They set them up in Kandahar, and they did this thing in the Canadian media where the Canadian forces would take this village called Panjwai, the Panjwai Valley, and you would read Canadian forces take Panjwai, and you'd be like, wow, that's amazing. The Canadian forces took Panjwai. They control Panjwai. And then, I don't know, a couple months later, you'd read in the Canadian press, Canadian forces take Panjwai. But in between those months, you never saw any record in the media of Canadian forces losing Panjwai. So how come we're celebrating the Canadian military occupying the same village over and over again without ever any news that the Canadian military left that village or lost that village? And similarly, for me, that was what reminds me of that is Turkey. Every once in a while, you hear that Turkey has cut off all trade with Israel. Again, this is the 5th time that Turkey has cut off all trade with Israel. How could you cut off trade with Israel multiple times? Once you cut off trade with Israel, what is there to cut off again? Well, of course, none of those 5 times, including this time, did Turkey cut off trade with Israel. Turkey is subordinate to Israel. You might do the math. You might do the Paul Kennedy rise and fall of the great powers math and say, well, how can Turkey with 100 million people, massive industrial base, manage to fend off great power plans to partition them 100 years ago? Formidable army, the biggest one in NATO, currently occupying Syria, parts of Syria. How could they why are they just doing whatever Israel wants? And then you just get that same mysterious mystery that they just do what Israel wants. And so Turkey has a job in this overall scheme, which is to make a lot of noise that they're upset with Israel and they're not going to take it anymore. all the while providing Israel with their oil, with their food, and with Syria. Turkey took Syria for Israel, and they are handing it over piecemeal, allowing their proxies to commit massacres against minorities, which is the basic price. That's what they are getting in return. The proxies' reward is the chance to do these massacres. And that's how Turkey pays them. They pay the proxy in massacres. And they make a lot of noise about how they're sometime in the next 400 years, they're going to fight Israel. And in the meantime, they're just giving all the resources, land that Turkey has been stealing since 2011 at least, but they're giving it all away to Israel now. So that's how seriously you should take Turkey's statements about how they're really mad at Israel. They've done more for Israel. They're doing more to hold Israel up in this genocide, keep this genocide going than almost anybody. Okay, so let's go to Lebanon. Lebanon, Naim Qassem, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, made a speech on August 25th commemorating the murder of al-Musawi. And I thought that the speech was really interesting because he's kind of managing expectations about resistance. And this is something that I also thought was really important to do, because Hezbollah was so mighty. Their performance in 2006 was so shocking. Their victory in 2006 against Israel was so shocking and so astounding to people that could be done. They announced these missile capabilities. They demonstrated these missile capabilities, especially in 2012, that I think you could get the impression that they were invincible and that they were unshakable. And I think that Israel found a formula between the pager attack, the assassinations, the infiltration of, into these devices. Naim Qassem specifically told Al-Mayadeen months ago that there was no infiltration. There's no human, and virtually no human infiltration. But their electronic infiltration of Hezbollah was extensive, beyond what they thought in terms of their hardline telephone network, the pagers, the walkie-talkies. So Naim Qassem, so you could get the impression that they were an unstoppable force, but with all of the resources and the ability to put the commercial infrastructure, the global infrastructure of global commerce at Israel's disposal, creating companies and supply chains and infiltrating supply chains and infiltrating the manufacturing and shipping of these devices. Israel was, and then using all of that to do utterly depraved things that nobody would ever be able to anticipate. Israel was able to turn the tables on Hezbollah last year. So Naim Qassem was trying to make this point that resistance is not, a resistance movement cannot repel an invasion. They don't have that kind of power to have an army that meets the Israelis at the border and repulses them. I mean, in theory, Egypt has that, although Egypt has also handed over control of the border with Egypt, between Gaza and Egypt. They've handed that over to the Israelis. So whatever Israel has, whatever Egypt has, they've just abandoned any abilities they have without any fight. So that's what Egypt is doing. When I said Turkey's done more than almost anybody, I didn't mean to, I said almost for a reason, and I don't want to leave Egypt or the Americans or the Saudis out, but certainly Egypt has a huge role in this genocide. But back to Lebanon. He's talking about how people argue in Lebanon, the people who want to collaborate with Israel, the people who want to disarm the resistance, they argue that the resistance cannot stop the Israelis from invading, and therefore they should disarm. Since you can't prevent aggression and all you're doing is making the Israelis mad, and as Tom Barak, the animalistic Tom Barak said, another real estate agent, Zionist, and traveler to the region, apparently he has Lebanese roots, he said to them that Israel's going to go wherever they want and do whatever they want in the region, and that's that. And
people are going to want to rob you, so you might as well just let them come into your house and steal your shit.
So if Israel's going to do whatever they want, and the resistance can't deter them, then shouldn't they just disarm and just let Israel do whatever they want? And this is the argument that Naim Qassem is trying to rebut. He says, who said the resistance prevents aggression? The resistance was established to confront aggression. We confront aggression. We do not prevent it. So he's just trying to manage expectations about what they can do. If Israel invades, they will resist. They will fight the Israelis that are invading and taking over. They will prevent the Israelis from permanently taking over Lebanon, or at least they will confront the Israelis in their effort to take over Lebanon, which presumably the Israelis are going to do. They're in the process of doing now. And the resistance is going to confront them. The resistance is going to impose costs on them. The resistance is going to impose casualties on them. But the resistance is not a conventional army that can match them and repulse an attack. That's never been what they could do. Even in 2006, they couldn't do that. They imposed costs on Israel beyond what Israel could absorb, and Israel withdrew. Of course, there was also a semi-functioning Security Council back then. For some reason, the Israelis were worried about international loss of support, which they're not worried about anymore. And there were various other equations, as we say, in place that don't appear to be in place anymore. So in 2025, Naim Qassem, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, is trying to tell his listeners, his viewers, that Hezbollah will not give up their weapons. Hezbollah will never give up their weapons, and Hezbollah will fight the Israelis when the Israelis invade and occupy Lebanon. And that's what they can do. So he has a message also in the end to the government. He says, expel the enemy from our land, stop the aggression, release the prisoners, and begin reconstruction. After that, we can come to the national defense strategy, a national defense strategy which may ultimately see Hezbollah absorbed into the Lebanese army. Why not? Of course, Lebanon exists, the Lebanese state exists as a puppet of Israel and as a puppet of the US. And their one job that they've been given, that they're scratching their heads trying to figure out how to do, is to disarm the resistance on Israel's behalf. That's a tall order. I don't think the Lebanese state thought they might have been up for the job, but these days it looks like they aren't for the time being. So they're going to either let Israel do it themselves or see if the Americans want to do it or something like that. He said, release the prisoners. I do want to make a note of that. There are Lebanese prisoners from the past round of the war in Israeli prisons. And Lebanon, the state, once again, handed over an Israeli prisoner for nothing, in exchange for nothing on August 23rd. So that's how things are going in Lebanon, headed probably towards, like I thought was imminent. It didn't turn out to be imminent, but I do think it's coming. Dual invasion of Turkey-backed Syria, HTS, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever you want to call them, the Jolani people, and Israel at the same time. And that's the plan. If Hezbollah cannot be disarmed before that invasion, they'll be attacked. And they will find themselves fighting both Turkey and Israel in Lebanese territory. So that is probably coming. And presumably that's what they're getting ready for in the resistance. The West Bank, I saw a story worth noting. The Palestinian Authority, who I mentioned earlier, they have announced that they're reducing school to 3 times a week because of a lack of salaries. I guess the Israelis are stealing their money, and so they can't pay salaries. And so they're not having school except 3 times a week. And one journalist said, our Palestinian Authority Security and Intelligence also scaling back their work to 3 days a week? Of course they're not, but it was a pretty apt question. So now, of course, we have to go to Gaza. And I don't believe in reporting unconfirmed things, but you probably have heard unconfirmed reports about an assassination. I'm not ready to talk about it, and I can't verify it, so I'll leave any details to that. There was an assassination that was confirmed by the resistance, that Mohammed Sinwar was assassinated on August 30th. There are really big battles in Gaza City, Zaytun neighborhood, Beit Hanun, preemptive attacks, raids on the Israeli soldiers. The resistance is trying to capture more Israeli army soldiers. It's very clear that they've been trying this for a little while. They're trying to figure out how to do it in spite of, or in the context of, the Hannibal Directive. I'm sure people listening know what the Hannibal Directive is, but just in case, the Israelis have a doctrine of, if Israeli soldiers are at risk of being captured, the Israelis kill the soldier and bomb the area extensively to try to prevent capture, because they don't want to trade Israeli captives for Palestinian prisoners, because holding and torturing and violating Palestinian prisoners is one of the main reasons that Israel exists. And if they are willing to trade Israeli captives for Palestinian prisoners, then they lose their reason for existing. So they don't want to do that, and they've been forced to do that before, several times this year, or several times in the past 2 years, and they don't want to do it. And so they're desperately trying to massacre their own soldiers. They're trying to massacre the captives that are already in Gaza and try to avoid any more prisoner exchanges. Prisoner exchanges are something the Israelis do not want to do. They want to kill their captives, and they want to kill their soldiers before they become captives. So the Palestinian resistance wants to get more captives so that they can get their prisoners out, because freeing their own prisoners is one of the most important priorities of the Palestinian resistance movement. And getting Israeli captives remains the only way that they can do it. They're not going to appeal to the Israelis' consciences. They have no conscience. They're not going to appeal to the law. The Israelis don't care about the law. The only book they respect is the book of Joshua. And the only law they respect is what the massacres that they're ordered to commit in that book. So the Israeli military is extending the Hannibal Doctrine, and the Palestinian resistance is trying to capture. And there was a series of reports the other night where we were watching them, and it looked like maybe the Palestinians had captured 4 Israeli captives, but they had not. And
هم من الحكومة وزراء يعملون، وكل قائمة الشهداء هي من الوزراء العاملين في المجالات المدنية. والعدو الإسرائيلي بإجرامه ووحشيته يستهدف حتى الأطفال والنساء والمدنيين العزل من السلاح، ولذلك تضاف هذه الجريمة بالاستهداف لوزراء وعاملين مدنيين إلى رصيده الإجرامي في المنطقة بكلها. هذه التضحية الكبيرة في سبيل الله سبحانه وتعالى لن تؤثر على موقف بلدنا لا رسميا ولا شعبيا، لن تؤدي إلى التراجع ولا إلى الضعف ولا إلى الوهن، إنما تزيدنا التضحية في سبيل الله سبحانه وتعالى ثباتا وعزما ويقينا وصمودا وتماسكا. مسارنا العسكري في الاستهداف للعدو الإسرائيلي سواء بالصواريخ والطائرات المسيرة أو بالحظر البحري مسار مستمر ثابت تصاعدي، ومسارنا أيضا في نصرة الشعب الفلسطيني في كل المجالات بكل ما نستطيع، وفي أن نخوض هذه المعركة المقدسة ضد العدو الإسرائيلي الذي هو عدو للأمة الإسلامية وعدو للمجتمع البشري بكله.
إسرائيل يا رسول الله لن نقول لك كما ونحن قد خبرناهم وخبرنا كذبهم وخبرنا تضليلهم وافتراءاتهم، هو عبارة عن استعراض ويشعر بأنه يهدد العالم بأحاديثه وبكلماته. إسرائيل يا رسول الله لن نقول لك كما ونحن قد خبرناهم وخبرنا كذبهم وخبرنا تضليلهم وافتراءاتهم، هو عبارة عن استعراض.
One of the interesting things that has come out of this that people came to recognize is that actually the Prime Minister of Yemen, who was martyred, was from the south. And he was a Sunni. And that shows that this is not the Houthis, that the West tries to call them all the time. This is the people of Yemen, who are united in their support for the Palestinian people, and who have been making sacrifices for the people of Gaza in a way in which only Hezbollah has also given that degree of sacrifice. And the members of the cabinet who were martyred, they were people who dealt with civil society. They were not military commanders except for one individual. They were all dealing with health or education or the economy. They were dealing with the problems of ordinary people, the problems that the United States and the Saudis and the Emiratis and NATO created in their 7-year-long genocidal war. They too carried out a starvation siege on Yemen for 7 years, which just ended a few years ago. So the Israeli regime has only shown its brutality, and once again it's shown that it is lawless and that it does not target the military, it targets civilians. It specializes in targeting civilians. As we saw the evidence come out on Gaza, the Israelis themselves know that overwhelmingly, almost 90% of the casualties in Gaza have been civilians. So they've been lying about it, the West has been lying about it, and the Western media has been lying about it. But the people of Yemen have, as I said earlier, they've lived through 7 years of genocidal war by the Saudis, and over the past 3 years, they've been 3.5 years, the last 2 years, since the genocidal war in Gaza began, they've been bombed by the Americans and the Israelis. They're not going to change course. They're going to be more steadfast, and they're going to be more popular across the region and across the world. The Israeli regime doesn't recognize that the more it carries out strikes against Iran, the more popular Iran becomes. The more they strike Hezbollah, the more popular Hezbollah becomes. The more they strike Ansarullah and the Yemeni armed forces, the more popular Yemen becomes. So the Israeli regime can celebrate all it wants, but it is only making things worse for itself, and it is making heroes out of these martyrs, and the people who will replace them will continue down the road of resistance. The Israeli regime has made a grave mistake by continuing this genocidal war for 2 years now. Across the world, it is despised, and it has shown itself to be vulnerable. We saw how Hamas and the resistance carried out a successful operation the other night, a very impressive operation. They are very much alive, and the Israeli regime, being despised across the world, has no future in this region.
I may have missed it, but did any Arab government condemn the assassination of virtually an entire cabinet in an Arab country?
Of course not, George. All of these countries, all of the Arab countries, except for maybe one or two, they supported the Saudi and Emirati genocidal war against Yemen for 7 years. And when Americans ships in the Red Sea were blocking food and medicine from entering Yemen, they all supported that. And back then, by the way, Qatar and Erdogan also supported the genocidal war. They supported the genocidal war until the divide between Qatar and the Saudis and the Emiratis emerged. And then they parted ways. And then Al Jazeera started shifting its coverage and changing its tone on Yemen. So they've never been sympathetic towards the Yemeni people. They've never cared about the Yemeni people. In fact, the propaganda against Ansarullah and Yemen has been so negative that many people had a poor view of them, ordinary people across the Arab world. And then it turns out that these people who had been so demonized, including among Palestinians, turned out to be the ones who were making, alongside Hezbollah and Iran, the greatest sacrifices for the Palestinian people. And so the people of Yemen and the government and Ansarullah, who were looked down upon and belittled, now they're the shining star of the Arab world. But none of these regimes will show sympathy because they're all in the Western camp, whether it's Morocco or the Emirates, whether it's Egypt or Jordan, whether it's Turkey or Bahrain. They're all in the American camp, and none of them are going to support the Palestinian people, and of course, by extension, none of them are going to support the people of Yemen.
Now, the Yemenis are not going to take this lying down, are they? They've already shown that they are capable at any moment and have repeatedly struck infrastructure targets inside the Zionist state. They're likely to do so again, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And we've seen how Yemeni missiles and drones have become increasingly advanced. And in their latest attack on the Israeli regime, in recent days, we saw that they scored. But also, the Israelis, every time that Yemen strikes, they have to use their surface-to-air missiles. And they're already depleted to a large degree. And they're also giving information about the status of their weapon systems and where they are. So when the time comes, when there will be a major conflict between Iran and the Israeli regime, each one of these Yemeni missiles are going to be able to collect an enormous amount of intelligence for that day, and they're going to be helping to deplete the Israeli surface-to-air missile systems for that day. But also, as Yemeni missiles become more advanced, they're going to become more dangerous for the regime. That when these missiles explode in Tel Aviv or elsewhere, or even when they're intercepted, it creates fear. It prevents people from moving to Palestine. It prevents people from working in Palestine. It prevents tourists from going back to Palestine. It only makes life continue to stay abnormal. And so what the people of Yemen are doing to the Israelis, the damage that they're doing is enormous, whether their missiles strike their targets or not. But more importantly, what they're doing is that they're shaming the rest of the region. Turkey, which has an enormous army, does nothing for the Palestinian people, yet Yemen, which has survived years of genocidal war, and today has been fighting against the Americans and the Israelis for 2 years, they are using their military to help the Palestinian people. The Egyptian armed forces, which lie right on the other side of the border of Gaza, they do nothing, yet Yemen sacrifices its soldiers and even its highest-ranking officials, as does Hezbollah. So this is changing the mentality of people across the region, towards the resistance, towards those who have been hypocritical, and it also shows the weakness of the Israeli regime, that they cannot deter the people of Yemen, despite all of the support that they get from the collective West. Because this is not Israel that's carrying out this war. This is the entire West that's carrying out this war. Israel is a puny regime, completely dependent on handouts from North America, from Europe, and from Australia and elsewhere. And of course, as the West declines, it's going to be more difficult for them to continue giving the sort of handouts that they've been getting in the past. But this puny regime, which is totally dependent, with all the technology that it has failed to deter the people of Yemen for the last 2 years. And this is something that history will remember. Yemen, what they've done for humanity over the last 2 years is unique.
And ditto the resistance inside the invaded Gaza territory itself. The Americans are openly acknowledging, and even Israeli officials, usually retired, are openly acknowledging that the resistance has more fighters than it did before October 8th and the beginning of this genocide, has more and more successes. I mean, you mentioned last night, but there's another going on right now, a security situation, in their words, which is extremely serious right now. It may be that more prisoners of war have been taken, who will be described as hostages, even though they're in a foreign army which is invading an internationally recognized occupied territory. The resistance is not going away in Gaza, and killing Abu Ubaidah, if he has been killed, they've killed 400 of his family members. 400. So they may well have killed him. They certainly are now claiming that they have, but that's going to change nothing except for the worse for them.
Yes, I remember when Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was martyred. I was in Beirut, and immediately Western journalists contacted me and put me on television and said, what will happen now? And I said, nothing. Hezbollah will continue the fight. his disciples will continue the resistance. Later on, when martyr Yahya Sinwar, when we saw his body, they again contacted me. And they said, well, what happens now? And I said, there are thousands of Yahya Sinwars in Gaza. They don't understand that by killing the prime minister of Yemen, his martyrdom is not going to turn the tide in favor of the Israeli regime. By murdering the leaders of Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah, they're not going to turn the tide. We've been told that Hezbollah is badly weakened. But look at the United States. They've mobilized Al-Qaeda in Syria. Their proxies in Syria, Julani and ISIS and Al-Qaeda on the one hand, the Israeli regime in the south, and also their proxies in Lebanon, the Lebanese forces and the fascist and pro-Western parties in Lebanon, all of them have been mobilized with Saudi money. And yet they're fearful of attacking the resistance. They're fearful of trying to disarm the resistance. Why? Because Hezbollah is very powerful, and Hezbollah is not going to go away, and Hezbollah's arms are not going to go away. So the resistance is much stronger than they pretend. They like to say that the resistance in Yemen has been dealt a major blow, or in Gaza they've been defeated, or in Lebanon they've been decimated. The reality is they are steadfast and strong. The real loser in all this has been the West and the Israeli regime. The West, their image has been destroyed across the world. No one will ever again believe Western claims with regards to human rights or women's rights or anything else. And the Israeli regime has been seen as genocidal across the world. This alone is more damaging than anything that the Israeli regime has imposed on the rest of the region. Each of these martyrs in Lebanon, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Iran, in Yemen, and in Iraq as well, each and a couple in Jordan, all of them have contributed to this enormous defeat of the Israeli regime. And this destruction of the image of the West, and especially the Israeli regime, will have grave consequences for the regime in future. This regime cannot last. It may take a while, it may take a few years, but this regime is dying.
Well, you have your leaders and your icons. I have mine. Che Guevara said.
It's a great quote. He said, Israel's toast within the next few years. This regime won't last another few years. That's wild.
I think he's right.
I think Israel was on borrowed time as soon as it started committing mass slaughter. I think they probably could have gotten away with maybe 10 more years of existence if they were just doing like mass incarceration like the United States does. But this murdering a prime minister and 80 other ministers or whatever is out of control. No other country does that. This is not sustainable. We can't do trade with you. Other countries can, like, their leaders can barely show their faces in public just for associating with you. Israel's done, dude.
It matters not if I fall. What matters is how many men come forward to pick up my rifle. And all the signs are that all the martyrs in Gaza have been replaced by 10, 20, 50 or 100 more fighters racing to pick up their rifles. Let's turn, Professor, to the big enchilada. You must be, as the rest of us are, reading hourly of the imminence of an Israeli attack on your country. First of all, do you think that is going to happen? And secondly, if it definitely is going to happen, why don't you get your retaliation in first?
Well, actually, I'm at a friend's home, and we're here for dinner. And so that shows how fearful the people of Iran are. We're all living our normal lives, and we're not really following this news as closely as some people are online. The Israeli regime, as you pointed out earlier before we began our discussion, they lost the war. We know that from the fact that Steve Bannon has said it at least twice, that they were being battered and Trump saved them. And we know that at the end, during the last 3 or so days of the war, almost all Iranian missiles went right through these layered air defenses that the Americans and the Israelis and others had collaborated to put together to prevent Iranian missiles from striking their targets. Iran won that war. And back then it was a blitzkrieg attack, of course illegal, with the full support of the United States and the Europeans and the International Atomic Energy Agency facilitating it by lying. But now Iran is much stronger because Iran has the Israeli regime.
Calling it a blitzkrieg attack is crazy work. Because we know who invented the blitzkrieg.
It gave it its best shot. It was supposed to be a regime change operation. So they used everything they had. And the Iranians now know the capabilities of the Israelis, the regime, and the Iranians have been dealing with their own internal issues, security, with their military shortcomings. Everything is being reorganized and rearranged, and Iran is producing more advanced missiles as well. So if we go to round two, Iran is going to hit much harder, and the Israeli regime will pay a much heavier price.
And if you don't know what a blitzkrieg is, it's a really fast. It's like rushing in RTS games or FPS games. You just overwhelm the enemy immediately with as many forces as possible. This is why the troopers that are sent in are called stormtroopers, because they are to storm the building or whatever. You get it?
And I think they know that. I think that those who are sane in the Israeli regime and the military know that it's not a good idea. But the issue is that Netanyahu is not pursuing the interests of the Israeli regime. He's pursuing the interests of Netanyahu. And these 2 years have all been destructive for the regime. There's been no victory for the Israelis. A regime that is despised across the world can never call itself victorious. So this regime does not have an interest in attacking Iran. But since yet Netanyahu knows that as soon as the war ends, he will be out of power, and probably soon afterwards he'll be in jail, he will continue these wars. So there's a good chance that at some point there will be a military conflict between the Israeli regime and Iran, despite the fact that it won't end well for the regime. I think I know what your next question is, but I'll still wait.
Well, my next question is to illustrate the point that both you and I have made this evening. Israel is a part of the West. Its crimes are a part of the crimes of the West. And now the European Union have installed the so-called snapback sanctions to try to further damage the Iranian economy. And so it kind of underscores my earlier question, which you deftly avoided. Why don't you get your retaliation in first?
Oh, I forgot to respond to that. I thought you were going to ask the question that you told the gentleman who called you about a nuclear strike, and you said you're going to leave that for me. I thought that's what you were going to ask.
Yeah.
I don't know if Iran will strike first or not, George. Iran never accepted a ceasefire. Iran accepted a halt, a cessation in violence. There's no agreement. Iran did not accept anything. We just stopped. They said that if they stop, we will stop. And the Israeli regime has been making threats against Iran. So it's clear that if the Iranians strike the Israeli regime, the world actually, George, I think you and I both know this, the world will celebrate.
Tell me, in relation to the caller, if Iran's new capabilities, new organization, begins to prevail in another round, as I'm certain that it would, the man's question, and it's a question on everybody's lips, will Israel fire nuclear weapons against Iran in those circumstances?
Well, I don't know. I'm sorry I got cut off for a second. I don't know. But the current head, the new head of the Supreme National Security Council, before he became the head of this body, he said, when he was an advisor to the leader, but he didn't have this position, he said that if Iran's security, if Iran's existence is at risk, then Iran's nuclear posture will change. And I think it's very clear what he meant. And therefore, the smart thing for the Israeli regime and its backers in the West to do would be to back off, because Iran's technological capabilities are clear to everyone. And I think Iran's missile capabilities have shown that. But I just want to say one thing very briefly about the snapback, because my voice got cut off. The snapback is more of a psychological issue. People in Iran are wondering what impact it will have, and it will have an impact in the short term on the markets. But it won't have a major impact, if any, in the long term on the Iranian economy, because those UN Security Council resolutions which were passed, and they were passed at a time when the United States was the hyperpower, and Russia, China, and others were much weaker than today. But those sanctions had to do with the nuclear program and Iran's military capabilities. It has nothing to do with the economy. And the United States has already imposed maximum pressure sanctions. These will not be new sanctions that the Iranian people will have to deal with. So it is a psychological effect, which will go away after a few weeks when the UN Security Council resolutions will be reinstalled. I, of course, have said many times that I think that this was the JCPOA, or the nuclear deal, could have been negotiated much better, and we should not have had this snapback provision. But in any case, it is not going to have that sort of impact. And the world has changed. And the Russians and the Chinese, alongside the Iranians, have said that the snapback by the Europeans is not legitimate because they are the side that violated the deal, not the Iranians, and they did not abide by the provisions to bring the snapback. So we live in a different world today, George, and you've seen how the leaders of well over 20 countries have gathered together in Tianjin, including the Iranian president, for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. We're living in a new world, and the West and the United States and the Europeans in particular, they are losing their influence. And the Europeans, by the way, by imposing the snapback, they will lose their last foothold in Iran. They will never have any special status in Iran again. They burned their bridges with the Russians, with the Chinese, and now with the Iranians. And they can just go back and forth to Washington like the little dwarves that they are, and continue to go downhill for the decades to come because of the policies that they currently pursue. So the snapback in the long run hurts the Europeans, because that was their only foothold in Iran. That was the JCPOA was the agreement where the Iranians and the Europeans would get together and talk. If there's no JCPOA, there's no need for us to talk with the Europeans anymore.
I mean, talk about Orientalism. You referred there to the SEO conference in Tianjin, and more than half the world is represented there. The leaders of the most important and biggest countries in the world are there. Biggest economies are there. Biggest concentration of wealth are there. Yeah, I promise you, Professor, not a single whisper of this extraordinary summit where the Indian president is warmly embracing the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, after decades of war, where the isolated Russians are right at the center of real-world events. Not a whisper of the existence of this gathering has yet appeared on any mainstream British broadcaster. That's Orientalism for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. But these are the same people who for 2 years have been trying to hide the genocide in Gaza and try to justify the mass slaughter and the crimes against humanity that are being carried out on a daily basis by the Israeli regime. These are the same people who've been telling us until just a few months ago that Russia is losing the war in Ukraine. They've been lying to their people for many years. But over the last few years, as the decline of the West has been increasing in pace, their lies have become more outrageous, and their reporting has become more like the reporting of the Soviet Union during the Soviet times. They have no credibility among their own people. They have no credibility across the world. They had an opportunity, George, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the United States was the hyperpower. They had a lot of control. A lot of people gave up ideology during that period when we had reached the end of history, as Fukuyama said back then. And a lot of people put resistance aside. And the United States and the Europeans squandered that moment. And they've been waging war after war against people across the world. And they've been waging economic war against their own people as well. And so in much less than 30 years, it's ever since in the 2008, let's say, it's 2007 and 8 and 9 when we had the economic crisis. Ever since then, it's become clear for many people that the West is in deep trouble. It is completely corrupt, and the media has no credibility. And what we're seeing today is far worse than what we saw in the previous decades.
Leader vows attacks on Israel will continue. So one thing that happened over the weekend, if you remember the last show, I covered Israeli airstrikes in Yemen, and Israel claimed that they targeted some senior officials. The Houthis initially denied it, but then they later confirmed that the prime minister was killed. So civilian officials were targeted. So big escalation there, and this is the response from the leader. He vowed on Sunday that the campaign against Israel that was launched in support of the Palestinians in Gaza would continue despite the Israeli assassination of the prime minister of the Houthi-led Yemeni government. Abdul Malik al-Houthi said in a speech, quote, "Yemen's position towards the Palestinian people is firm and cannot be reversed. Our people say to the Palestinian people, we are with you and we support you. The military path in targeting the Israeli enemy, whether with missiles, drones, or a naval blockade, is continuous and unwavering," end quote. So the name of the prime minister was Ahmed al-Rahawi, and he was a civilian official, and he was not considered part of al-Houthi's inner circle or anything like that. He was tasked with running the day-to-day affairs in Sana'a and other areas of Houthi-controlled Yemen, which is where about 70 to 80% of Yemenis live, according to numbers from the U.S. State Department. The Houthis have been the governing authority, or Ansar Allah is their official name, really their party name. They've been the governing authority in the area since 2014, since they first took power in Sana'a, after ousting a U.S. and Saudi-backed government, which a U.S.-backed Saudi-UAE coalition attempted to reinstall during a brutal war that lasted 7 years from 2015 to 2022 and killed hundreds of thousands of people, including from bombing and ground fighting and starvation and disease. It was a brutal blockade and bombing campaign. And this is context that Israel and its supporters now want you to ignore. Some of the things, the Hasbarists, like the pro-Israel people online, like all deployed the same talking points about this, because obviously there was outrage from people. Oh, they killed the prime minister of Yemen. And then the response is, oh, the Houthis aren't the government. They're a terrorist organization. But the fact is that they are the government in the area of Yemen where most people live, and they have been for more than 10 years. You might see a map and it'll show the area that the Houthis control, and then you'll see this vast expanse of land to the east. But that's mostly very rural desert to the east there, where they are in North Yemen. It's really Western Yemen is where the majority of the people live. And North and South Yemen used to be two different countries, and the Houthis basically control all of what used to be North Yemen until they merged, I think, in 1990. And again, this context people want to forget. The other talking point is that the Houthis plunged Yemen into famine, just ignoring the fact that there was a war and blockade on the country. They're just blaming the famine, all the starvation deaths that happened in Yemen. They're just blaming it on the Houthis. But anyway, so, as I said in the last show, killing their political leadership is not going to stop them. And they're suggesting things could escalate. They're essentially saying that their attacks on Israel could escalate. If you remember, Trump bombed Yemen very heavily for a month and a half and killed over 250 civilians, a brutal campaign, and it did nothing to stop them. If anything, it emboldened them more at the end of it. So, killing their civilian leaders is not going to do anything. And I was looking at the history of al-Rahawi, and you know who tried to kill him? Someone tried to assassinate him before a few years ago. It was back in 2015, so 10 years ago. And that was Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda blew his house up. And if they failed to kill him, obviously, but that's who the U.S. always seems to end up on the same side of Al-Qaeda in all these conflicts. And of course, the U.S. was actually cooperating with the Houthis against Al-Qaeda just a few months before, backing the Saudis and the UAE against the Houthis. And we know that the UAE and the Saudis used Al-Qaeda guys in the ground fighting, recruited Al-Qaeda fighters to join these anti-Houthi militias. But it's in our interest for some reason to be fighting the Houthis. All right, so the next one here, Israeli warplanes pound southern Lebanon, sparking forest fires. This one's from Jason Ditz. So Israel continued its attacks in southern Lebanon. They sparked forest fires. No word yet on any casualties. I'm not exactly clear. Israel's claiming that they targeted underground Hezbollah sites. But one thing, as Jason says in the article, this is as the Lebanese government is saying, okay, we're going to disarm, Hezbollah. And they said they were going to release a plan to do it on Sunday. Yet Israel continues to bomb southern Lebanon, even though the Lebanese government is saying that they're going to do what they want, yet the airstrikes continue. I think they're just doing it because they can, and they don't want to get people used to them not bombing Lebanon. All right, so the next one here, Israeli troops raid multiple villages in southwest Syria. Another one from Jason. So over the weekend, Israeli ground troops re-entered a number of villages in Syria's Quneitra governorate, stepping up checkpoints and confronting local residents as they attempt to pass by. The new offensives began Friday evening, entering the village of Ain Baida and Ofania in the northwestern part of the governorate. They also entered Al-Hariya on Saturday morning. So these are villages in southwestern Syria. But there's several, at least 4 here that they're raiding. Israeli ground troops are going in, and of course this is as the U.S. is trying to get Israel and Syria to sign some kind of deal, but it doesn't seem like there's been any progress on that. All right, so the next one here, Iran's parliament submits emergency bill to withdraw from the NPT. So this article is from The Cradle. So Iranian lawmakers drafted an emergency bill on August 28th to pull the country out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, marking Tehran's first legislative response to the decision by France, Germany, and the UK to revive UN sanctions. So the parliament, members of the parliament want to do the withdrawal from the NPT, which, as I said, I think could be used by the US and Israel as a pretext for another war with Iran. Hossein Ali Haji Deligani, the deputy chairman of the parliament's Article 90 committee, said that the draft would be registered in the legislator's internal system before being debated in open session next week. He said, quote, "This step represents the most basic reaction by parliament to what has happened, and it will be followed by other measures that will make the countries that push for the activation of the snapback mechanisms regret their actions," end quote. And he also accused the Iranian Foreign Ministry of wasting time with what he described as pointless dialogue. He said, quote, "We have a serious criticism of the performance of the diplomatic team and the foreign minister in dealing with these 3 countries, which are themselves the source of many problems in the world. If those pointless contacts and negotiations had not taken place, we would not now be facing the announcement of the snapback mechanism," end quote. So essentially, Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, he's coming under criticism here from the parliament for bothering with the negotiations that they recently held with these 3 European countries. And this is the attitude, and Araghchi himself has said in interviews that people are telling us, why waste time? Especially when it comes to talking to the U.S. Nobody in Iran trusts the U.S. anymore. So that it looks like they want to go through with this withdrawal of the NPT. Which again, I think could ease, like the Iran hawks in the U.S. and Israel are going to jump on this to try to push for another war. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. to deploy Typhoon missile system to Japan. So the U.S. Army announced on Friday that it will be deploying the controversial Typhoon missile system to Japan for drills in September.
Gaza's school year begins intense as Israel bombardment destroys 90% of schools.
When 10-year-old Lamadib and her family were displaced to western Gaza, all she managed to hang on to was an old stationery set. On Monday, she lined up with other students for the first time in nearly 2 years. Not in a school, but in a tent.
My mother registered us at this camp. It is a good chance for us to get education because almost all of the schools and houses have been leveled by the Israelis.
The principal says teachers are determined to give classes, but many students arrive with nothing because their homes were bombed and their families can't afford to replace what they lost.
Before the war, our students used to go to school wearing their new school uniforms with school bags and notebooks. Now, they don't have uniforms, bags or anything because people don't have money to buy them and there are no stationery stores.
These children are the lucky ones. Hundreds of thousands of others aren't going to school.
So many students can't come to school because they live very far away and there is no transport to bring them. And also because of the ongoing displacement from place to place. The whole situation is very difficult and very tough.
An entire generation is trapped between rubble and despair. Their classrooms replaced by loss, their future stolen by war.
For the third year in a row, the school year is not beginning in Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of children here are deprived of the right to education. Many have reached the age of 8 without ever stepping into a classroom and are unable to read or write. Ibrahim Khalili, Al Jazeera, Gaza City, Palestine.
I thought it was interesting that Miss Rachel gave an interview at this late date and time. I don't think I've ever heard her talk before.
DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Well, if you've spent any time around young children in recent years, our first guest may need no introduction. The Washington Post has called her the Mr. Rogers of our era. Her YouTube channel has about, 16 million subscribers and more than 10 billion views. In January, Netflix began licensing episodes. Her show is now the 7th most watched on Netflix in the first half of this year. We're talking about Ms. Rachel, the children's entertainer, educator, and mother, who's become a worldwide sensation over the past 6 years since she began posting videos for toddlers on YouTube. Much like Mr. Rogers before her, Ms. Rachel hasn't shied away from speaking out about injustice, most notably about Gaza and the plight of Palestinian children. She recently wrote on Instagram, "I want my taxes to help children, not kill them. I want my taxes to feed children, not starve them. I want to build a better world, not bomb it," unquote. In another Instagram post, Ms. Rachel said she would refuse to work with anyone who's not spoken out against the treatment of Palestinians in Gaza. She's also featured Palestinian children on her show. This is a video of Ms. Rachel singing with Rahaf, a 3-year-old girl from Gaza who lost both her legs in an Israeli airstrike.
Let's go back to sleep, Rahaf. We're so tired. See the bunny sleeping till it's nearly noon. Shall we wake them with a merry tune? They're so still. Are they ill? Wake up soon. Let's pretend to sleep. Wake up, little bunnies! Skip, little bunny, skip, skip, skip. Skip, little bunny, skip, 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 little bunny, skip, 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 then stop. Let's hop again. Hop, little bunnies, hop, hop, hop. Hop, little bunnies, hop, hop, hop. Hop, little bunnies, hop, hop, hop. Hop, 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 and stop. Yay! That was so much fun. Thank you.
That video has been liked over 1 million times on Instagram. The 3-year-old girl in the video, Rahaf, came to the United States from Gaza for medical treatment after losing her legs in an Israeli airstrike. She was brought to the United States by the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, which has evacuated over 250 children from Gaza. On August 13th, Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez and I talked to Ms. Rachel in one of her first live interviews, as well as Tarek Hilat, the director of the Treatment Abroad program for the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. Days after we did this interview, the State Department halted all visitor visas from Gaza, including for children who need urgent medical care. The Palestine Children's Relief Fund decried the decision as dangerous and inhumane. Let's turn now to our interview with Tarek Hilat and Ms. Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. It's an honor to speak with you. Rahaf is an adorable, bright, loving 3-year-old girl. She came here through the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, PCRF, and she was evacuated with her mom, Isra. and they're getting therapies and treatment at the hospital and living with a host family. And she's absolutely delightful. She's similar to 3-year-olds I've worked with because she loves to pretend, and she's just adorable and just taking in the world and so sweet and innocent. And then she's unlike 3-year-olds I've worked with across communities because she has lost her legs. She's away from her dad and her brothers right now.
There in Gaza.
Yeah. And so, yeah, just seeing her, and also she's having more of her human rights respected right now. So she's getting medical care and she's getting food and she's absolutely thriving. This girl is going to change, she has changed the world, and she's going to go so far. She just has that chance now because she has her human rights respected. And I saw videos of her in Gaza on the hospital floor. I saw videos of her looking extremely depressed, and one of the things her mom told me is thank you for helping her with her mental health, because in Gaza she just looked so distraught, and she's 3 years old, and 3-year-olds are so delightful and happy, and she just, yeah, it was just really hard seeing her in Gaza, how she looked and the amputations, and she's been through so much, and she's 3.
You rarely make overt political statements, but instead stress helping children regardless of where they live and who they are. What made you decide to speak out more forcefully on the Palestinian children? And what's been the reaction that you've gotten from your millions of followers?
Well, as an early childhood educator, I know what children need to thrive. They need food, and food is being blocked from them. They need water, and water is being blocked. They need to be in school, and they've been out of school for 2 years because most of their schools have been bombed. They need medical care, and most of their hospitals have been bombed. So I see precious children, and I see them just like I see my children. And I see all children as precious and equal. My deep care for children doesn't stop at any border. And I saw these human rights violations, and I had to speak up because it's who I am. That's who I am as Miss Rachel. I love all kids.
You've also spoken out on social media about Ariel and Kfir Bibas, Jewish children whom Hamas took hostage. And after the Bibas' deaths were announced, you wrote in a post in February, quote, "My heart is with the Bibas family, the Jewish community, and people all over the world who are grieving. We need to protect children always." But this...
Yeah. Well said. I mean, it's truly appalling the amount of children that have been inadvertently put in harm's way or intentionally put in harm's way during all this. They are truly the faultless in all of this. Alright, is this what we're switching to? A bunch of libs were outed in this chorus creator incubator program. Stuart Perelmuter, Brian Tyler Cohen of Midas Touch, Ellie Langford, Graham Wilson. Olivia Juliana, Lauren Peretta, Peretra, Barrett Adair, Suzanne Lambert, Ariel Fodor, Sander Jennings, David Packman, Lee Gowan, the politics girl, Eliza Orleans, Zachary Kirk, V. Spehar, Kat Abu Gazela, Elizabeth Booker Houston, Allie O'Brien, Keith Edwards. Ooh, I know who Keith Edwards is. He's like a Midas Touch spinoff. Perry and Aaron Parnas. The Zactivist? Miss Frazzled. Trump dead is still trending? Trump falling sick just days after meeting Putin should be highly suspicious. Ooh, damn. The best thing that will come out of his mouth will be his last breath. Jesus. Yo, what the fuck? If Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump kicked the bucket at the same time, the party'd rage for a week straight. Oh, man. The fuck is this? Is this AI? Holy shit, that actually doesn't look like him. Oh, this was interesting. APAC Dems are starting to get heckled
in their community, show up as well, and it's a good time. This time we're doing something a little different. We're going to be going and taking a look at Wesley Bell's town hall in St. Louis, Missouri that happened last week. And it did not go particularly well for Wesley Bell, in part because the town hall was interrupted by pro-Palestine protesters. And, well, Wesley Bell doesn't have a great track record when it comes to wanting to end the genocide in Gaza. So this is, it's going to be a time. Let's take a look.
Congressman Wesley Bell.
Oh, this got hot? You were actually here, Paladin? Hell yeah.
Try to keep walking on both sides of the stage so people can see and things of that nature.
I know that he said beams, but I really like that the caption read beans. We got some beans here.
But let me just start by saying what I hear online when I talk to people is, we want to talk, we want to ask questions. And so now we are here, so let's do that. Let me ask this. I'm going to tell this to everyone in this room. Just stop talking. This is not your town hall. You can leave. Nobody, if you don't want to be here, you can leave. But let me just say this. Let me say this.
The camera?
You can take your freedom of speech and go. Hit the road. Take your opinions and your valid critiques and go away from me.
That they used for this must be warping him crazily, because his proportions are absolutely insane right here. I can't emphasize enough. I am not distorting this video in any way.
The bottom line is, and I'm saying it because I see more folks on this side, but I'm going to keep going back and forth, is that I don't duck away from tough questions. And the problem that...
I don't duck away from tough questions, but I want you all to leave so you don't ask me the tough questions. I want you to all duck away from asking me tough questions.
The thing that concerns me is that we got into a place, not only in this society, but in St. Louis, where we're not even willing to have conversations. And we got to be able to talk. Whatever the issue is, let me just be clear. There are a lot of important issues.
Oh, you also organized against the data center in St. Charles? Travis T, thank you for gifting a sub to my rear end. Hell yeah. Good job to folks on the ground here showing up to this town hall, giving them what for like inaction on genocide. And also good on all you fine folks down in Missouri showing up and putting an end to that St. Charles data center. I think more and more activism needs to be around like stopping these data centers from stealing our water and like dramatically running up our energy bills. Like it's a pretty easy win to organize around, I think.
That we have to deal with as a region. Stop. Listen, we're going to get to it. We're not going to duck any questions. You don't have to Listen, I really want you to be here because I actually want you to hear my conversation when we talk about the question. If you're not going to be respectful of everybody else, it's so. Now, what I want to say is there are a lot of important issues in this region, and so there's a lot of people who want to talk about a lot of different issues. And we're not going to be here all night, so we got to get a chance to talk about all those issues. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have conversations because what I want to start off with is tell you.
I love that he's starting off to talk about how much he wants to have a conversation while also trying to avoid a conversation. It's crazy.
And I can tell you about is while we're sitting here being divided and fighting one another, we got other folks out there that are taking our democracy from us right before our eyes. Right before our eyes. The Supreme Court is gone for a generation. We have lost the House. Let me finish.
Yeah, what are you going to do about any of that, numbnuts? Like, that's the thing, right? Let's talk about how all the ways we're fucked, but what are you going to do about it? You know, what are you going to do about it? When it comes to genocide in Gaza, there's some pretty easy things that you can do as long as you're willing to lose that sweet, sweet AIPAC money.
Here's the thing, man. We got a lot of people, we got a lot of things that we got to deal about because we're seeing federal funds being taken away from cancer research. We're seeing federal funds taken away from Alzheimer's research. We're seeing, we don't take the questions. We're seeing, I'll answer that question too. I'll answer that question, but I'm not going to answer yours. Just relax, we don't get to those questions. So we have right before our eyes our.
He's like, I'm not gonna be the guy that gets overpowered by the crowd. Like, you're not that guy, pal. You are the guy to get overpowered by the crowd. Per usual. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how charismatic you are, how much you identify with people in the audience, what your labels are. The majority opinion of the population is the trumps everything. The people always have the final word.
Democracy is being taken from us. And so, now this is what I decided to do.
Oh, that's right, Paladin. This is the guy who took down like Cory Bush armed with AIPAC money rather than unseating a Republican. What a piece of shit.
What I decided to do is I'm gonna give y'all.
I was trying to remember why I know his name, and that would be it.
I'll give you an opportunity to say your voice is heard. We know you're being here. If people want to let them know where you stand and your voice. So I'm going to give you that minute, but that minute is almost up.
Also, Paladin, since you were there, can you answer why was there a bowl on the ground? That seems like a really random thing to have on stage.
Start talking about issues, okay? There's a lot of issues, and we're going to talk about all of them, and we absolutely can talk about what's happening in the Middle East. And there's other issues because while we do not like seeing the humanitarian crisis right there, we got kids, Heard you. But you know what we got? Let me say this. That is terrible what's going on in any war. Let me tell you this.
It's terrible what's going on in any war. What a weaselly little guy.
The number one killer of kids in St. Louis between 1 and 17 is gun violence, and there's some people who want to talk about that too.
I wonder what the number one killer of kids in Gaza is. literally, this is from today. Israeli military says strikes on Gaza hospital targeted a Hamas camera without providing evidence. Which, like, from the AP, this is a pretty damning wording from the AP. But just to be clear, what the context of this is: the Israeli military bombed Nasser Hospital earlier today, multiple times, killing like over 20 people. And their reasoning that they provided after the fact, again with no evidence, was that they believed that there was a camera being operated by Hamas at the hospital, and that warranted killing 20 civilians. No, it's literally like they thought they saw a spider and they had to drop like, you know, tons of munitions on it. It's insane. It's insane, right? Like, there's a reason why people are so fucking angry about this. They killed doctors and children. Also, earlier today, The New Yorker posted an interview with Jacob Lew, who is the former U.S. ambassador to Israel under Biden, how former Biden officials defend their Gaza policy. And I wanted to pull this out because, again, I do think that when we're talking about our current political hellscape, so much of it has been enabled and strengthened by Democrats, right? And I want to just read you this one excerpt. I want to read you one excerpt from this piece, okay? And it is damning as hell. When you would call them, Israel, in the middle of the night and say, what on earth happened? What was usually the answer? The general pattern was that in-the-moment stories were inaccurate, and that the Israeli military and government establishment were not in a position to fully explain yet. We could almost never get answers that explained what happened before the story was fully framed in international media. And then when the facts were fully developed, it turned out that the casualties were much lower, and the numbers of civilians were much lower. And in many cases, the children were children of Hamas fighters, not children taking cover in places. Sorry, what did you just say? Like, oh, I guess it's fine to kill those children. It's fine to kill, you know, those children. After all, the bloodline has been tainted, I guess. You know? This is the sickness that is at work in the Democratic Party. When we're talking about Wesley Bell accepting that AIPAC money, we're talking about that line of thinking and that line of reasoning becoming just an accepted, okay, well, I guess it was fine to kill those kids. It was fine to kill those children. So I have nothing but utter and complete contempt for Democrats like Wesley Bell.
We're going to sing our national anthem.
Fuck, we're gonna sing our national anthem. Fuck off.
This conference happened to say, we're gonna call up Mayor Wilson, and if you would please stand for our national anthem. Something that we all can do, because we all are citizens of the United States. Thank you. Greetings. Thank you. Can you see by the dawn's early night what so proudly
this is so uncomfortable. Oh, I'm having a good day this round. This is a Tim and Eric sketch. The vibes of this are so deplorably rancid. This is crazy. This is crazy. Like, how do you continue to double down on this ideological position while people are screaming?
This is even worse than the anthem performance at the third party debate where the singer couldn't stop apologizing. What the fuck? Can't hear you, I'm singing. I'm losing it. Oh my god. I imagine it's hard to sing while people are heckling you loudly. Oh brother, this gal stinks. My weed kicked in right on time. It's beyond rancid, it's just rot.
At you about how
I don't know what that third party debate was where the singer couldn't stop apologizing, but that sounds horrific.
how that position supports murdered children on the other side of the world. It's crazy. Oh, the bowl is coming back.
It's a big ass wooden bowl. Looks thick too.
Don't tell Trump, right?
Can you imagine, like, being a security guard for these absolute ghouls, and you realize, like, oh, I'm here to protect them from, like, some righteous anger. Holy shit. That's wild. Like, yeah, I don't agree with these people. Actually, if you're one of these attack dogs, you probably don't even think about it that deeply.
Is that the crowd? Is the crowd chanting "They need to go" about Wesley Bell? Are they singing a song about how he needs to go? Cause like, damn, you organized a whole ass song right about getting this man out of office. Hell yeah.
So there are questions that were submitted during the registration process, and then there will be questions tonight from you, the audience. If you came in and you did not receive a blue ticket, and you would like to have a question asked, please raise your hand. One of the staff members will get to you.
Yeah, the ants were marching 2 by 2 and taking Wesley Bell away.
To a blue ticket. We will pull from this little cute little brown bamboo that's in here, and these are blue tickets, and we will pull from there, and you will be able to ask your question. But right now, we're going to go through the top questions that were asked during the registration process, and we will let Congressman Bell answer those. So please raise your hand if you have not received the ticket and you would like to ask a question, and that would be the second part of our process. All right, first question.
Okay, Riley Ray, I'm gonna read your comment. Riverboat Jack, I have a question. I'm very drunk. Can you tell me what the fuck is going on in this video? Yes, the man sitting in the chair right there is Wesley Bell. He is an elected representative in the House of Representatives of the United States Congress, and he is holding a town hall with his constituents, the people who voted him into office, and it's going very, very poorly for him because he took a load of AIPAC money and has been, well, let's say, unwilling to condemn the genocide going on in Gaza, and is, by all accounts, pretty cowardly, and people are not very happy about that. And I'm simplifying that quite a bit, but that's the long and short of what's happening here.
What are you doing, Congressman Bell, to fight back against the rise of authoritarianism and fascism coming from the Trump administration?
Did she just say fascism? Okay.
So what I would say is that for the folks who know me know I don't exaggerate, I don't do the hyperbolic stuff. So when I tell you, I mean, I'm going to get to your questions. I'm going to get to your questions. Yeah. So when I say how serious and dangerous what we're seeing to our democracy, I absolutely mean it. And I think what is happening, and I talked about that earlier, what is happening in our democracy and why it is so important that we push back, and there's a strategy to be able to push back. And it starts with litigation, legislation, and mobilization. And the honest answer is, right now, in the super minority.
Honestly, you don't even have to let them talk. They've made their choice with the AIPAC money. Everything you need to know about them has already transpired. Just scream at them. Make them uncomfortable to be in public. You don't even have to give them the time of day at all. Call them a coward, shame them. Until they feel deeply uncomfortable being around the very people who elected him into office. He should not even be getting a word in edgewise.
We don't have the ability to subpoena. We don't have the ability to investigate because Republicans have that majority, and so they have that ability to do it. But we're going to continue to introduce legislation to push back on what this administration is doing.
God, what a weak ass answer. Yeah, we're going to introduce legislation that's doomed on arrival, but it'll fight back. Okay.
We're going to continue to work with our partners to get litigation passed, which we've had over 200 cases. We heard you. We had over 200. We're going to get to you. Everybody wants to be here. So there are people here who want to talk.
Yeah, dude literally saw Hakeem Jeffries and was like, I'm gonna be just like him. I'm gonna be just like Hakeem Jeffries. What a courageous leader. Everyone loves Hakeem Jeffries, right?
I'm giving you the same thing. I'd love for you to stay here. But if you can't respect everybody, you gotta go. You can't respect everybody. He can hear you. So anyway, so we can't even answer. We can't even answer questions that not other people. We can only answer questions that other people. Let me just say it. Okay. All right. So while we get to it, so why don't you let me answer questions because these questions were submitted. All right. It's not your question. At any rate. So those are the things that we're doing, and we have been able to push back on some of the things. But I got to be honest with you, when we say we have an absolute moral obligation to win the elections, to win the midterm, to take the majority.
Yeah, only if you plan to do something good with that power, you ding dong. Yeah, you have a moral obligation to do that if you plan to do moral things with that power.
Because no matter what we do, I heard you, we're going to get to those questions. No matter what we do, if we don't take the majority back,
justify the means? Is that what you're saying?
Already taken the Attorney General position, so nobody's investigating it. The Supreme Court has already said that the president essentially has immunity, so they're not going to do anything about it. And so we're in a place where we're in a super minority.
Yeah, I can turn the audio up a little bit.
And
that's too loud.
In that super minority, we don't have the ability to legally. I'm sorry, we heard you. Don't get to your questions. And if they were so when we talk about the other questions, you want to interrupt them? Thank you. So when we have those questions, we have those issues here. We have to come together. We have to make certain that we are bringing the same energy to the elections next year.
Your position on God. Some people who register for tonight's challenge, your position on God. Oh, you're quiet. Okay. Raising concern about U.S. support for Israel doing what they describe as genocide.
She said, "Oh, you're quiet." Well, yeah, that's what everybody's here yelling at him about. Like, a question about Gaza. Let's go. You ready to show your ass? Let's do it.
Of civilians facing starvation. How do you respond to those criticisms? And what do you believe America's role
Get his ass.
You gonna let me answer the question? Are you gonna let me answer the question? You gonna let me answer the question now? You can want to talk about this. Hey, here we are. You gonna let me answer the question? Or you just gonna scream and take up your attention? Thank you. Okay, now. So here's the thing. There are a lot of complicated issues about this.
It's not complicated.
Okay.
Not complicated.
Here we go. Here we go. Sit down. Sit down. It's not your time. You want to have a time? I'll have one. It's not time. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down.
Because everything else that's about to come out of your mouth is about to be a fucking lie. That's why.
Sit down. Sit down. Sit down.
He's so whiny. Dude has the microphone and he can just talk over protesters instead of bitching and moaning at so much of a murmur. For real. Can't even get past the first line of a BS answer.
So, there wasn't a full sentence. You know, sometimes there's such big prayer. So, there are a lot of...
Dude keeps belittling members of the audience that are... they're his constituents. Like, you gotta be able to answer these people who have... Like, I'm sorry, even if you are someone in the camp and you believe what he believes, you should be able to understand why people are showing up to protest you and are angry as hell, right? Like, you might be wrong in your belief, but you should be able to understand why people believe like I believe, that there is a genocide in Gaza. Should not be difficult for you to understand that. But their goal isn't to understand, and their goal isn't to treat these as valid concerns, because their goal is to support their donors, AIPAC. Their goal is to support, like, the line that they have been fed by their lobbyist handlers. And ultimately, that is why this man can look down his nose at these people and say, and belittle them. People passionate enough to actually show up to a town hall, organized.
Issues in this situation. Feeding children is not one of them. That's a very simple thing to do, is to make certain that we are flooding the zone, surging humanitarian aid.
And we're not. And we're not. And why is that? Why are we not doing that? Who's preventing all of the aid from surging?
Do you want me to print out an answer and just read it? So, what we need to do is stop talking.
Also, Paladin, since you were here, and apparently we're going to see a cop who went around threatening protesters in a little bit here, but since you were here, like, is this reflective of, like, the general community's attitude towards Wesley Bell? Because if so, this is giving me a lot of hope that we can sort out the issues within the Democratic Party when it comes to folks like Wesley Bell, when it comes to these people who just have completely abandoned what their constituents actually want.
Arguing back and forth with one another. Again, we understand how you feel. He's trying to answer. Okay, I'm gonna make a plea with you. How many? What do you need? 2 minutes?
For this question? No, it'll take 2 minutes.
Okay, can you give him? Can you give him? It's not going to be complicated. And I'll tell you what. If you don't agree with what he responds to, I'll give you a minute of all the things you need if you want to get up and say, I'll give you all. You can just shout it. Shout it all. Okay. Right.
doesn't like he doesn't even have like the political sense to like appear concerned, to appear like he's listening and cares like he doesn't even have that. He's just sitting there like, oh, he can't wait for this person to be done screaming and being upset about children being massacred. Oh my God. Like, it's crazy. Like the level of like ineptitude is insane. I believe the woman who's screaming rather aggressively is being dragged out. There are a lot of cops there. Yeah.
Several Arabic places. I'm talking now. I'm never not only can I talk. We try it. You want to try to talk? We can talk about that. I met with the Palestinians. I met with the World Food Health Program. I met with the Gaza Health Foundation. Because what I wanted to do, here's the thing.
So soft, like as soon as someone raises their voice at him, he just completely folds. As Red Bar would say, the fool's sip.
Really hate this man so much more just seeing him respond to the concerns of his constituents in this way. Like, keep in mind, this guy's supposed to be a Democrat. Just absolutely disgusting behavior.
No, we don't have to respect everybody. No, we don't. Everybody's been speculating whether Trump is alive or not.
To get to today. So in just a second, is Trump having mini strokes?
Or like just speculating about his health in general.
He's been gone. He's been hiding for a while. We haven't seen him in front of the cameras. He hasn't done a press conference in quite a while, longer than he's ever been since 2015. And so the question arises, is he having mini strokes? You got a lot of theories out there right now about his health. Everybody sort of understands that they're hiding something when it comes to his health. The question is what? And so it might be mini strokes. I'll break that down.
Kyle Kalinski's too much at 2x.
For you. Then we'll get to Trump plans a luxury resort in Gaza after the genocide and the ethnic cleansing. This is openly being discussed because we live in hell. Then we'll get to Israel has done another terrorist murder spree, this time in Yemen, and they've gone after the Houthi prime minister and his entire cabinet. We'll talk about that. We have an absolute revolt and rebellion happening at the CDC right now, with RFK Jr. pissing off everybody in sight, which is leading to mass resignations of important experts. We'll get to some new Epstein emails that dropped. That one's fun. And then later on, Joe Rogan is absolutely panicking because I think he realizes that Mark Maron's crusade against him is working. That now, his little crew over there in Austin, they're no longer the cool kids. In fact, they're pretty fucking lame. So Mark Maron is having quite an impact here. And we love to see Rogan squirm. We love to see him squirm, and that's exactly what happens. So we have all that and more. You guys know the drill. Everybody, please do me a big favor and subscribe to the channel. That helps out big time and costs you nothing. Support the show on Patreon. $2 a month, $5 a month, $7 a month. It goes a long way. And thank you to everybody who does support on Patreon. It makes a world of difference. You have no idea. Because remember, this is real independent media. I've never talked to an advertiser. I've never done an ad read before. Never talked to a billionaire. Never talked to a government. Never talked to a PAC. Never talked to a think tank. None of that crap. It's all grassroots funded and the default ads on YouTube. And you guys make that possible. So thanks again for that. Also, support Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. That link is below. Have a lot of great interviews that we've done recently and coming up. And go subscribe to the Corn's World YouTube channel as well. You don't want to miss that either. We do live Kyle and Corn episodes. We try to do them every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, where you guys can come hang out with us live. So don't miss those either. Corn's World, the YouTube channel. All right, now let's go ahead and dive into it. We got a lot to talk about here. So this guy named Adam Cochran, he describes himself as an independent investigative journalist, and he released a thread here which lays out why he thinks Trump is dealing with strokes at the moment. And that's why he's been gone away from the cameras for longer than he ever has been since 2015 when he came onto the political scene. That's a fucking decade ago, guys. That's a decade ago. He's hiding from the cameras. No press conferences. Most importantly, no talking to the cameras. All we get is these like photos from a distance, which look like those old pictures of like when you spot a Sasquatch in the woods. Some paranormal investigator has a picture of a Sasquatch from like 300 yards away. That's all we have now when it comes to Trump within the past week or so. So I forget, was it Tuesday or Thursday? You guys tell me, put in the comment section. Last time he was in front of cameras, it was either Tuesday or Thursday. And since then he's been gonzo. He's been out of here. And everybody is sort of speculating and everybody sort of acknowledges, yeah, something's going on with his health and they're hiding it. For a variety of reasons, not just the fact that he's been gone. But now we have at least one theory as to specifically what's happening. So he's going to lay it out here for us. He says the following. I believe there's growing evidence that the White House is covering up the fact that Donald Trump has been dealing with TIA strokes, TIA strokes, and that he likely had a more significant ischemic stroke this week. So let me just point out, TIA strokes, those are mini strokes. So this guy's saying he's had a bunch of mini strokes recently, and now he just had an ischemic stroke this week. Okay, here we go. Let's start with the basics. TIAs are temporary blockages. You'll see symptoms like leg dragging, eye drooping, etc., but they resolve within 24 hours. Ischemic strokes leave a lasting impact but can range dramatically in scope and severity. TIAs precede an ischemic stroke in about 30% of patients and often result in long-lasting interventions to try and prevent any risk of a larger stroke. Now let's get to what paints this picture with Trump. So that's interesting. So in other words, he's had mini strokes, and so there was a 30% chance he was going to have a bigger stroke, and this guy's saying it looks like he may have had a bigger stroke. Okay. In March 2024, Ron Filipkowski notes that Trump has been dragging his right leg for a while. It's something we've seen him do on and off over the past year, but not super notable on its own. So this video, I've seen this one before. This one doesn't look that crazy to me, but I've seen other videos of him dragging his leg more than this. So he does his little dance, and then he goes to walk, and you'll see the right leg being dragged right there, yeah. And there are multiple videos of him doing this at different times. This is one of the earlier ones from 2024 from Ron Filipkowski. Then in a Time Magazine interview from right after the election, we see the first note of Trump's hand bruising. So this is right after the election, we see the first hand bruising. Once again, something people didn't think much of at the time. It comes up again during the Macron visit on February 25th, 2025, where Carolyn Levitt repeats the lie about it being from shaking too many hands. So here's, again, this is February, and he's got these bruises on his hands. February, okay. The next medical event we see is the president's annual physical report. Comparing the medication list to his old reports, we notice 3 new medications. Rosuvastatin, ezetimibe, however you pronounce that, and daily aspirin. Okay, so these are new. At first, I thought this might be normal medication for managing cholesterol, and I've certainly heard of preventative aspirin used in the past, but I decided to interview some heart specialists, and I'm glad I did. There are 2 general takeaways I've heard from multiple specialists. Daily aspirin is not recommended for prevention anymore. An aspirin regime is to treat something. Ezetimibe is a second-line medication.
Pause in the air.
Not used for...
Pleased to have you. Do you think Trump's alive? Or do you think he's dead?
regular LDL treatment, that's cholesterol. Statins like rosuvastatin will manage cholesterol alone, whereas ezetimibe will be used as a second line if the patient is at high cardiovascular risk, such as prior strokes, heart attacks, or arterial disease. Then it's used for stroke prevention. Trump's previous medical reports claim his cardiovascular health is great and is on the statin, so he shouldn't need ezetimibe. But this also brings us to the aspirin. As it turns out, aspirin hasn't been advised as a daily course prevention method for a while. Daily aspirin no longer recommended to prevent heart disease. Some old doctors may still incorrectly prescribe it as such, but qualified medical staff who keep up with literature wouldn't. A daily aspirin dose is now used as a blood thinner for specific lines of treatment, including in managing ischemic strokes. Then in June, we see Trump's swollen ankles, and for the first time, the White House medical team is willing to admit he's got CVI. That's chronic venous insufficiency. His bruising is related to aspirin regime and shaking hands. They keep coming back to this claim, as aspirin does indeed make bruising easier. There are three problems with this claim. One, bruising is seen on both hands, not just his dominant hand. So he had a bunch of bruising on his right hand, and then here it is, we saw it on his left hand when he went golfing. This is about, I want to say, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. The next problem, CVI is not a sudden onset issue, and swollen ankles is an intermediate symptom.
Probably. Yeah. You know, the bond between man and Gundam is inseparable.
Donald Trump has not spoken publicly for 6 days, and a recent photo is getting people to wonder what exactly.
Everyone on Twitter was saying that this is evidence that he's dead, that this is not him.
Exactly is going on. So in this video, I'm going to have a bit of fun with some of the evidence that is, if you can say evidence, that is popping up online with these theories of what is happening. I will get to that. We're going to have some fun. It's going to be lighthearted because it is Labor Day. And as Bernie Sanders tweeted out here, this Labor Day, thank unions for weekends, 8-hour workdays, a minimum wage, paid overtime, breaks during work, the right to strike, child labor laws, workplace safety standards, Now let us grow the trade union movement and win more for workers. So this should be the important message coming out of Labor Day.
Imagine how the evangelicals would get if he did die. That's so crazy, dude. The imperfect vessel has fallen off the mantle and shattered. Our poor Trumpty Dumpty. I guess they would say that it's like it would be some kind of like unholy event that's a sign of the end times. Israel would want to bury him at the very top of Mount Herzl National Cemetery, bet. I bet Trump is the type of guy to not be a donor, because he doesn't want his organs potentially going to a person of color, perhaps.
Not the video that I'm about to break down here. But that said, I'm going to have some fun. All right. So sit back. Let's go through the examples, what is happening, some of the more worrisome, if that's the right word, evidence out there. So we're all aware of his ankles, his swollen ankles, the bruise on his hand that he's apparently had for months, has been covering it up with makeup. It came out that it was in fact something after they...
I think the funniest part of that is that he was missing for 6 days, and then like Trump is dead started trending, of course, why wouldn't it? And then pictures emerge of him out playing golf, and Trump is dead is still trending. People were like, nah.
They had been claiming repeatedly that it was totally normal, and in fact, a heroic hand-shaking injury. That's what they had been saying. Quote here, President Trump is a man of the people, and he meets more Americans and shakes their hands on a daily basis than any other president in history. His commitment is unwavering, and he proves that every single day. So,
like, if you shook as many hands as him, you would disappear for 6 days and have bruises on your hands and have swollen ankles. You'd like...
So, based on the track record of the lies we have already been told, I can understand...
Gaslighter in chief.
Right now, why some people are being a little skeptical of the current situation. I'm not saying everything's perfect in Trump world. It's possible something happened, something's going on. But again, we'll get to the evidence that is being brought up. So it turned out that with the bruise in the hand, the swelling of the ankles is chronic venous insufficiency, a condition which can cause swelling and pain, is common among older adults. And it's not typically fatal unless, I guess, it's untreated, but it can cause discomfort, pain, and reduced quality of life. Now, the other thing that was interesting that came out this week is that Vance, in an interview with USA Today that was published on Thursday, stressed that the president is in good health and has incredible energy, saying in part, I feel very confident the president of the United States is in good shape, is going to serve out the remainder of his term and do great things for the American people. He added, however, that, quote, if God forbid there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think of a better on the job.
Vance, why do you gotta compliment the president like it sounds like he's fucking you? You know what I mean? I gotta say that president, he's got some energy. Let me tell you.
Job training than what I've gotten over the last 200 days. So openly speculating about maybe having to come in. Also got people thinking, hey, maybe there is something serious happening. And then that's when we get to this photo today. All right. Let's take a closer look. I laughed out loud seeing this. So Republicans Against Trump tweeted this out. It's been almost a week since Trump made a public appearance or spoke to the press, apart from being spotted leaving the White House, allegedly on his way to the golf course. This is very unusual. What's going on? So they have, I guess, enhanced photo here.
It's not real. God damn it, dude. I legit looked at that and like, oh, he looks bad. Oh my god. I had a feeling I was having my leg pulled when the official photo was blurrier than previous ones that I had seen. I was like, oh god, the fuck.
I don't know, man. I'm not sure how enhanced this photo is. There clearly is some changes to obviously what the actual photo itself is. If they can't even get the S right in the enhanced photo, what are the chances that the rest of the face is correct? So it appears to show him with no hair here. I think it's very clear he does have hair on the back of his head here. It's kind of brushed out to show just a big thick neck and more prominent lines, I suppose, or a line in his face.
Alright, we didn't need to spend too much time on the fake news, do we? What's going on?
Out too well. Now, the funny thing is, the follow-up here. So this is a different image. Trump at his Virginia Golf Club with mega radio host John Fredericks. Okay, it looks like it's a normal Trump photo to me.
Somebody photoshopped a cutout of his exact body, like they were carrying him up in the background. But also, have you ever seen people look more fucking unenthused to be near the president of the United States?
But no, there's more. Andrew Cochran tweeted this out. He has a big long thread about this. 13
Andrew Cochran? His name's Adam. What the fuck?
Tweets.
Did he say Andrew?
Andrew Cochran tweeted this out. He has a big long thread about this. 13 tweets. Other than the weird staging, we noticed that Trump's eyes are barely open, especially his right eye. Wait, I thought it was his left eye. Now it's his right eye. Okay, someone else says now it's the right eye. This would be consistent with someone recovering from a minor stroke or larger TIA, who is recovering from physically, but not fully well yet. Just looks like Trump to me. I don't know. I guess he's wearing less makeup. I'd say he probably looks better, if anything. But no, there's more. This smile is weird. It's an odd smile for Trump. Large, overly toothy, and uniform. The rare times he smiles with teeth, it's smaller and larger on one side. It's not this clenched teeth-full smile, and his face doesn't push back that much when he does it. Okay, so let's look at the comparison here. Here's I guess the what he's calling the normal smile. Here's the crazy smile. All right. I did a quick search. Trump smile. This is one of the top images. It looks a lot like the one today. Not really seeing much of a difference here. Did he have a stroke back then too? Like, I know people are really wishing for certain things to happen.
I know.
That doesn't mean you can wish them into existence.
Right. Pretty unscientific. Here at Democracy Now! Today, 20-minute segment on Hurricane Katrina, talking about the new documentary.
Spend the rest of the hour looking at the devastation in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Today, 20 years ago, on August 29th, 2005, Katrina roared into southeastern Louisiana, tearing through the Gulf Coast with catastrophic force and gushing winds, driving a massive storm surge toward New Orleans. Thousands of residents were abandoned by state and federal officials, left to fight for survival in the rising floodwaters. Many stranded on the rooftops of their sinking homes without water, food, or medical care. Efforts by community members to rescue their neighbors laid bare the resilient spirit of New Orleans amidst what became one of the deadliest hurricanes in United States history. That's at the heart of a riveting 5-part documentary series by National Geographic, released just last month, called Hurricane Katrina: Race Against Time. This is the series trailer.
If you're still hearing us and you haven't left yet, please leave. I hate to say this, but I just don't have enough body bag.
The calmness before a storm is deafening.
As Hurricane Katrina was approaching, we knew this was going to be a catastrophe.
I didn't want to leave because I didn't know what we was going to be coming back to. I just was praying.
People won't realize how big Katrina was.
It's too big to turn. It's gonna hit us.
It's not a normal hurricane. Something's wrong. And my heart just sank. We have a breach in the levee.
We have rain inside the Superdome. I repeat, rain inside the dome.
3 minutes, it went from the ground to the roof.
A lot of people suffered, and a lot of people suffered needlessly.
Just let me know y'all living, you heard me?
People coming out of one bad situation, but they didn't know they was coming to another hell.
We expected FEMA to come in, but there was no help.
I told the guys, go find whatever boat you can find. We went and did what we had to do to try to save people's lives.
This community was not wanting to go out and just loot. There was people trying to survive.
You got a governor. What is they doing? Sincerely, bro.
That's not something you ever want to do, is tell the troops to shoot civilians. Governor, that's your people.
They just let us down. To them, we wasn't even human no more. But people from New Orleans, we knew how to survive.
And this is supposed to be the greatest country on the planet.
In order to prevent something, you got to understand why it happened in the first place.
There is a house underneath you all the
For more, we're joined by Tracy A. Curry, the Academy Award-nominated director of this acclaimed new documentary series by National Geographic, Hurricane Katrina: Race Against Time. All episodes are now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu. Tracy Curry is also the co-director and producer of the Oscar-nominated documentary Attica with legendary filmmaker Stanley Nelson. Tracy, welcome to Democracy Now! It is truly astounding, this documentary series. I watched it on Hulu just a few days ago. It was a beautiful day in New York. By the end of it, I thought it was raining. I thought the waters were rising. This inexorable move toward disaster. You have captured something like I've seen no one else capture it. And I wanted you to start off by talking about the systemic failure. This isn't just a natural disaster of the rising waters. This is an absolutely catastrophic government failure. If you can talk about, everything leading up to it and the level that racism played in the response to those who suffered and died, almost 2,000 people.
Yeah, Amy, first of all, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I think one of the things that we really wanted to show in the film is that it really wasn't the storm itself, that the storm, in fact, was sort of a catalyst that revealed and exacerbated, as you said, all of these sort of pre-existing systemic and structural failures that had actually been failing people long before the storm ever came. And the storm comes along and sort of rips away any sort of sense that there was safety and protection for these people. And so part of what we tried to do with the film is every episode peels back another layer of those broken systems that failed people during Katrina. So in the first episode, we understand that this is actually an environmental justice story and the destruction of the natural environment that caused a vulnerability for the people of New Orleans when Katrina came. And then we get into what we know is the failure of the man-made barrier, the levee system that the Army Corps, that the government was responsible for building in a way that made it vulnerable to the floods. Then we sort of pull back the media systems and institutions and how those failed people. And then we kind of pull back the state violence that people were subjected to. And from there, we sort of get into the story about housing policy and again, pre-existing racial disparities in housing policy really informed who was able to come back and recover and restore their lives after the storm. So really, we go into all of these many levels of systemic and institutional failures that, again, pre-existed the storm, but the storm comes along and exposes and exacerbates all those things to create, as we hear Malik Rahim say, a disaster that became a catastrophe.
Well, your film, Tracy, is not only very, very informative, of course, and powerful, it's also absolutely beautifully filmed and compiled. So let's go. We'd like to show another clip from the documentary. Again, the title is Hurricane Katrina, Race Against Time. In this clip, we hear from Ed Bush, who was a Louisiana National Guard major during Katrina, and Shelton Alexander, a spoken word poet from St. Bernard Parish, who filmed his experience sheltering inside the Superdome. His footage was weaved into the documentary.
There is no comms, and since the loudspeaker system didn't work, I walked around the 30,000 people in the Superdome to let them know we're working on it. And I think it's going to be buses, and we're going to bring, I don't know how it's all going to work, but buses are coming.
It did uplift our spirits. And so I was watching people settle beefs and shaking hands, you know what I mean? The place started getting real trashy. So a lot of the teenagers, they started coming together and they started cleaning up.
There was a young man pushing around one of those hotel luggage carts with a person laying on it. And he said, "Hey, this lady just passed out. What do you want me to do with her?" And she was okay, but and she was conscious, but she was clearly overheated. And I said, "Can you roll her to the medical center? It's right down there." And so he took it, and he came back about 10 minutes later. He's like, "You want me to keep doing this if I see stuff or I need people?" And I was like, "Please do." He loved that he had a role. The risk of allowing that young man to help push people to the medical arena was this much. The impact of other people seeing how he was helping was colossal.
If I count around for service, please do so. We'll start in a couple of minutes. I count on around.
The National Guard chaplain will talk to us and he'll say, "What are your concerns right now? What are you thinking?" And people just, would say, "My loved ones."
I know, the loved ones. Look, one of the things we want to focus in on is, as bad as it is, we can rebuild a house. I have no home to go to either. Everything I have has been destroyed. I'm wearing what I have. So we're all in the same boat. But you know what? All of my family is okay. And that is important. And that's why we're here to pray. But yeah.
New Orleans is a city that pray. And I thought he did a great job. And he, as a man of God, stood up there and he spoke to us and he made us feel better.
Even though we are uncomfortable, we give thanks that God sent his angel down to comfort us.
A lot of people started feeling like, now we chosen at this point in time.
Amen.
We in this thing together. And before we get it even worse, we're going to get out of here.
That's a clip from the docuseries Hurricane Katrina, Race Against Time. The film also features stories from Katrina survivors like hairdresser Lynette Bouette. This is Bouette in her own words from the documentary.
And so I wanted to come back into the community and do what I had to do. And I was not going to stop until I got back to where I intended to be back in 2005. Every penny I have made since Katrina has gone into me getting back into my salon and my property. It's mine. And like I told the people that rode home, you will have to pry 'em out of my wrinkled up little brown hands to get it.
So, Tracy Curry, those are a couple of clips from your docuseries. So if you could tell us some of the personal stories, the interviews you do with survivors, Malik Rahim, who Democracy Now! Has also, Amy Goodman has also spoken to at length, and others, the personal stories you got of the hurricane and how people survived.
Well, one of the things that I and the producers that I work with learned early on, we made some early visits to New Orleans before we ever started filming anything, really just to listen and hear what people had to say. And one of those conversations was with General Russell Honore, who you see in the film, who sort of comes in and finally begins to kind of wrangle things so things start moving. And one of the things that he told us, and General Honore knows Katrina better than most, is that his understanding is of what Katrina was, is that it's what you experienced, where you were, where you stood in it at the time. And so that really informed our understanding that there isn't just a Katrina story, there are many Katrina stories, as many Katrina stories as there are Katrina survivors. And so what we really set out to do was to collect as many different parts and pieces of that story as we possibly could to begin to make something that felt like a whole telling of what happened and to center the experience of those stories and the people that lived it. And so we really set out to understand what it was to be in the Superdome, as we heard the clip with Shelton and Ed, what it was to be trapped in your attic. And we spoke to Lucretia Phillips. You played the clip from Ms. Lynette Boutte, who was stranded on the interstate highway. We spoke to someone who was inside of the convention center. We spoke, as you mentioned, to Malik Rahim, who, while he was across the river in a part of the city that did not flood, was experiencing racialized violence as a result of the vulnerabilities and people being exposed, and lived where there was also police violence that was happening to an unarmed man in Algiers. So we really tried to get as many parts of what it was, this sort of basket of experiences that we all kind of understand collectively under Katrina, that, as I said, really is not, it was the name of the storm, but really is not about the storm at all. It was about all of these other ways that the storm revealed and, as I said, exacerbated the vulnerabilities that people were living with at the time. And so we really tried to ground that in the experience of the people who really lived it and restore the narrative and the story to them.
I mean, the story of the government malfeasance. I mean, when you have the former FEMA director, right, who famously said he didn't realize people were in the convention center. I mean, so shocking when of people were there. When you had, and then of course you think about the level of experience these people had in dealing with catastrophes as opposed to political appointees, and the level of racism, those who got saved and those who didn't. If you can talk about, I mean, a changed city, why this isn't just about 20 years ago. The demographics change with so many African Americans left New Orleans. People didn't even know where they were going. As they got on planes, they wouldn't even be told that it became a whiter city. All the teachers fired at the beginning. It was so astounding. And then it becomes a prototype for the charter school system in the United States, an entire charter system replacing the public schools, Tracy.
Yeah, and one of the things, I'm really glad that you mentioned that thing about the public school, because there's so many levels and layers to which Katrina transformed the city irreparably. And one of the things about the firing of the public school teachers is that when you think about who made up a large population of those teachers, it was Black women. And I spoke to someone who we didn't end up putting in the film, but she was one of those teachers. And now 20 years later, when she should be living comfortably in her retirement, she's still having to work because her pension that she would have gotten as a retired teacher was cut in half. when the school system was thrown out, as were the teachers. And so there are just all these levels and layers that were not necessarily apparent at the time to the ways that Katrina has just really transformed people's lives. We spoke, as I said, to Malik, who I know you guys know well, at Democracy Now!, started this organization, Common Ground, that was doing environmental remediation work and healthcare. Another person in our series, Alice Kraft, while living in a FEMA trailer, started a health clinic for people in the lower Ninth Ward. And one of the things they tell us is that there was a huge mental health crisis. This was a profound trauma for everybody that experienced it, and there was never any sort of healing for that. And so they're just, what you're sort of getting at, I think there, Amy, is just all of these sort of levels and layers of lasting harm that were done as a result of this that I don't think were quite apparent. And even 20 years later, I don't think are quite apparent in how this city has been irreparably changed. I talked early on to a lot of the people when we were just sort of listening to what people had to say, and what they told me is that, you know, for those of us who go to New Orleans as visitors, it feels like the New Orleans that we know, or the New Orleans of our imagination. We do the Mardi Gras, the Bourbon Street, the jazz festivals. But for them, which is to say the people who are of this place and lived it, they experienced this bifurcated experience of New Orleans that they describe as before Katrina and after Katrina. And so much of what that after was like is that these very close ties of kinship and community that really defined life in New Orleans for the people who lived there were rent apart by Katrina in a way that was never knit together. I mean, people were kind of called refugees, and there was all this sort of othering language that was used to describe them. But really what they were was internally displaced people. And many of those people never, ever, ever came back. So this was just an absolutely transformative event in the lives of these people and this city, and continues to be to this day.
Well, Tracy A. Curry, I just want to
Yeah, we saw in this other documentary that people who were integrated into other communities after being displaced were referred to as the Katrina people. No comment. Chick must be taking Labor Day off. Good on her. I think I'm going to leave it there. If you want to support the channel, like the stream and subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Free Palestine, fuck Israel, crush Zionism forever. Take care.
Thank you. hospital.